Hello, good evening. We are here live on the Bronze Age Nerd Show. We have a great show tonight. We have a couple awesome guests lined up. First, before I bring those guests in, I do want to take a second, as people keep trickling into the chat. I do want to say hi, thanks to everybody that's popping in here. Want to just basically explain what's going on tonight. So our guests tonight are going to be Kyle Willis, who there's been some controversy surrounding comments made about him. I'll just put it that way. And I think as much as this whole situation, everything dating back to the situation going on with NickGQ and Epic Nation collection, mostly has been kind of a black eye on the community, in my opinion. I don't think it's been something that is really reflecting very positively on the community. That said, the best way to move past this stuff is to talk about it. It's to put it all out in the sunlight, put it all out in the daylight, make sure there's, every stone's kind of turned over. We all look at it. We all decide what to do and we move on. Now, one of the things that hasn't happened in this whole conversation from my perspective is we haven't seen Kyle Willis have a chance to say what he needs to say. He hasn't shared his side of the story. So I'm doing my best to come on here tonight and just be absolutely neutral territory. We're Switzerland here. And we're just going to give Kyle Willis a chance to talk about what he's experienced. My other guest tonight is Matt Kennedy from Pop Sequentialism, who's been, kind of involved in some of the shows that have been going on recently. He's another great voice to add to this conversation. So what I would ask for you before we come on the show, before we bring our guests on, all I would ask is if you're in the chat, feel free to ask questions. We'll try to get to those as we can. I'm going to ask you to try to be respectful. I think this is a kind of forum where we can all kind of be adults and talk about the situation without getting into name calling and all that kind of stuff. So that's the last thing I'll say about that. Without further ado, I want to bring on our guest. The first guest I'm going to bring on here is Matt Kennedy from Pop Sequentialism. Hello, Matt.
Hey, good to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here. And our guest of honor tonight is Mr. Kyle Willis. Hello, Kyle.
Good evening.
Good evening. Especially for you over on the East Coast, which, by the way, I do realize a lot of you are watching from the East Coast. I appreciate that. We're going to try to keep the show. There's some other streams out there that go for 3-4 hours. We're going to try to keep this roughly around an hour, I think. We'll see how it goes to kind of be friendly to everybody on the East Coast that's watching. So I just want to thank both of you for coming on the show tonight and getting a chance to talk about this, kind of going over some of the things that have been going on. Kyle, I really mean what I said in the intro there. I really want to give you a chance to kind of tell your story, and I'm going to try to talk as little as possible, get right to that. With that in mind, I'd love if you would kind of maybe talk us through where this kind of started. In my mind, that might be kind of around the controversy with NickGQ going on pressable defects. Maybe that's kind of a good starting spot, but I'll let you start wherever you want. And I want you to kind of tell your side of the story of what's been going on here for you.
Well, my life, when the word NickGQ is involved since July, has just been this surreal blur. So where did it all start? It all started when I met him, you know what I mean? And this larger than life character, everybody here who tuned in, who wants to see this show, they've all seen NickGQ. They know he's this over the top, crazy character, and they want to see what he's got to say next, And that's what I subscribed to when I got a booth with him at SuperCon in July in Miami. And I was amused, to say the least, by this guy. And I got to watch how he does business, watch how he interacts with people. And then I got to see the convention be over. And then we go out to dinner and he's the same character. He never clocked out. It was like, what's the comedian that they made the movie about a man on the moon? The hell was that?
Oh, Andy Kaufman.
It was like he never clocked out. He was always this NickGQ, turn it up to 11 character. And I was amused by him, but I was also endeared to him. I liked him, I ran a show with him at SuperCon and let him do a Whatnot show and sell any of my stuff that wasn't the show exclusive that I printed just for that show. Let him run any of the books that I had and split the take after Whatnot fees 50-50. And he couldn't believe it. And I don't think anybody had ever done that to him. He's usually the one going in other people's rooms and spending all of his money, tell him, give it away, and all that shit. And this is before I really knew, how he was on Whatnot. And he was so taken aback when I split those fees with him, or split that take with him, that he hugged me, which I thought was out of character for the guy that I've been sitting next to for 2 days, you know? But yeah, man, I liked Nick well enough when I was sitting next to him. But I met him through a fellow named Ricky. And I've had a chance to tell this story up until a month ago, before when he was attacking me. So, you know, I feel like I'm repeating myself, and everybody already knows all this.
This is Key King, Ricky?
Ricky Key King Comics. So we all went out to dinner in Miami after day 1 of SuperCon, and Nick like paid for the whole bill, you know, and he didn't know us. He didn't know everybody there. But in the sense of community, and I guess that's something that he flexed that he likes to pull. So he bought dinner for everyone. Javon Jordan was there. My best friend, my oldest and dearest friend, Mikey, was there. And we go out to dinner a second night, and dude, the motherfucker never left his chair. So he must have called like ahead of time or something, because he paid for our dinner the second night also, which was just, at this point, it was just absurd, you know? So then we wrap up the show. He goes home. But I don't really know him like that. I don't have him on speed dial or nothing. I only know what I hear from Ricky, and Ricky calls me or messages me that Monday or Tuesday, and he says Monday when Nick got home, he went to see his specialist, and his cancer had metastasized to his liver. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? You know, this guy that I just met, you know, this character, this guy that was so gracious to us, is gonna fucking be dead in a couple. I mean, I don't know how long people last once that stage happens, but I know it isn't very long. You know, it's always like, yo, you got 3 months, and then 2 months later they're gone, kind of deal. So Nick wanted to do a cover with me because he had watched me and Ricky enjoy success doing a couple of covers on my own like sketchbooks with a new treatment to an old cover or something. So after C2E2 happened, he had this idea to do the ultimate fake out. I assume we've all seen that book, right?
Yeah, I bought a copy.
He comes to me, okay, cool, right on. So he comes to me with the idea, which is an idea that I actually saw on Instagram, and he's like, can you do this? And I was like, well, I can't trace that dude's artwork. He's, you know, well, make it your own or whatever. And I was like, fuck, all right, you know, what are we doing with it, you know? And he wanted to do the same thing that I've been doing with Ricky, which is when you print my book, that the contents of that book is all my artwork. I'm a nobody, right? So you pay to print the books, and then we split them 50-50. And then it's up to you to put heat on the book, and then hopefully my half of the print run is worth something. That way I don't have to charge you a fee, and then it tanks, and I feel bad. You made an investment in the books, but you walk away, at least you got the books. You know,
pretty fair split.
Yeah.
Sure. And, you know, and print runs for a nobody like me, you know, 50, 100 copies of the book, no big deal, you know. It's not an exorbitant amount of money. So we make the plans to print the books. It got complicated, but before it got complicated, the week leading up to, he was going to come down here August 27th. He called it Super Show. He was going to have an event. He was going to sell his copies, and he was going to raise money for St. Jude's to, quote, fight the cancer monster, so that the kids can fight the cancer monster, raise money for St. Jude's. Apparently he had his own money, and he didn't do this for money. He did it for the people. He did it for the love and to be a part of a community, and for the love of comics. So a week before he was supposed to come down here, there was an Instagram chat with me, him, and Ricky. And he goes, you guys, you got to get on this new app. It's called Drip. You got to get on Drip. And I was like, all right. So I signed up for Drip, and I hit apply to be a seller on Drip. And you have to like prove who you are, where you sell, what your credentials are. So I gave him all those links, and then I forgot about it. And then he keeps telling us, sign up for Drip. And I'm like, I already did. And Ricky's like, oh, I'll get to it eventually. Long story short, I got approved to sell on Drip before he did. So now I've got this Drip seller account, and I don't know what to do with it. I'm trying to go through the onboarding, learn how to navigate the website and all that shit. And Nick comes down here the 27th. So 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock the night before, I go to bed early, so I get a good night's sleep. I wake up to take a piss at like 2:30 in the morning, and he has blown my phone up. Since I talked to him last, he had gotten approved to sell on Drip, and he saw that I had my copies of the book. I had scheduled a show. I was going to go on Drip at 2 p.m. He was going to get here at noon, so he was going to sell copies first. I was going to go on Drip and sell 10 copies. I had them already listed. So all his messages were like, you need to take that show down. You're confusing everyone. All of these books need to be sold through my account. They can only be sold through my account. And I'm like, what the fuck is he talking about? So I just video called him. And when I video called him, he was in an Uber on the way to the airport up there. And he's like, you gotta delete the show. And I was groggy, and I'm like, why? And he was like, because all the books got to be sold through my account. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense to me, bro. What are you talking? Long story short, he thought that I wasn't going to get any of the books. Somewhere between making the deal and the day of the show, in his mind, he was going to have me create this one-off piece of art, have it printed. He paid for the printing of the books as scheduled. But I wasn't going to get any books. And he was going to sell all the books, and I would make money off of signatures. I don't charge for my signature, and remarks. And I was like, are you out of your fucking mind? What are you talking about? And I was like, you know how I do business. Not only do you know how I do business, but you watched me do it twice with Ricky. And he tried to change the terms. He tried to get in on the deal when I did my first one with Ricky before SuperCon. But he told me, he's like, hey, he kept sending Ricky back to me with these little tweaks to the change of the terms. Instead of giving him some of the books, tell him I'll give him promotion. I'll be the guy with the mic down at SuperCon and all this stuff. And I kept saying no. So lo and behold, he tried to change the terms of our deal when me and him had a deal. And I was like, that's not happening, bro. What are you talking about, man? Now I'm tired, and now I'm irritated because this is just ridiculous. And I'm tired right now. Forgive me. My eyes are fucking watering.
It's late over there. Man.
Like,
I understand.
Well, I got up at 5:30 and it's after midnight. So I tell him, look, bro, you could do two things. You can either come down here, get your half of the books, and we rock this event, or you can stay the fuck home, get in that Uber and go back to your house. Figure it out. And I hung up, turned my phone off, and I went back to bed. I woke up. When I woke up, he's on a plane, and Ricky, bless his heart, was trying to do damage control. He was trying to, you know what I mean? He knew that Nick was being crazy, but he was desperately, like, I think he was just like hoping that somehow it would all mesh and work out, you know, because he would tell me what I want to hear, and then he tells Nick what he wants to hear. But there's no talking to Nick. If anybody's ever had an argument with this dude, there's Nick's way or the highway or whatever. And I was just like, absolutely not. So now my wife is worried. We had said, and not only is he coming down here, we're going to run fucking whatnot streams, drip streams for the first time. But I have a comic book shop. So we had set Facebook event. We're going to have our dollar books, buy one, get three free, $quarter books for the day, just to get bodies in the door to help this fool and me sell these books. So now my wife's like, we can't have this unhinged guy coming into the shop causing problems in this little town. I was like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? What do I do? She's like, well, if we have to trespass him, we have to trespass him. So I called the police department. They're like 2 blocks away. They sent a sergeant over here. And as bizarre as it was, I explained the situation to her. I did a deal with this book. It's not even a comic book. It's an art book. This guy's acting like he thinks I'm not getting paid now. And so she's like, okay, well, we have a missing kid right now in town, but I'll check on you every 20 minutes. And if everything's not okay, we'll get him out of here or whatever. I tried talking to him on the phone. Now he's in an Uber. It's an hour drive from the airport to here. So he's coming from Jack's airport. I'm on the phone with him. And he's just like, I don't know. He's like, I talked to Ricky. I don't know if you have like gambling problems or if you got drug problems. Talk to me, man. What's going on? I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? I was like, I'm not changing the terms of my deal because you're acting crazy. So either come here and act right or don't come. I'll cancel this whole thing and I'll go home and I'll take a nap. No, don't do that. I'm just scared of the cancer. Da, 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 da. So he shows up and we make it through the day. Okay. Yes, there were complications with the print run. There were questions there, but I've already spoken my piece on that. If anybody wants me to go over that in the chat, I can. It's a waste of time. It's a nothing. We get through the day, and he still begrudgingly we say our goodbye. I let him use all my shipping supplies in the fucking shipping room, and he flies home. Ricky runs another show after Nick leaves, and he was going to run one final show, but he was so tired. We'd been up all day with nonsense, dealing with people, running show after show after show. So I had Ricky take 10 completed sketch covers of mine. I took pictures of them all. I was like, bro, take them home because it's your buyers that are buying them. We're splitting the money. Take them home and we'll split the money after you sell them. Now that super show is over. Nick doesn't like me anymore. I'm okay with it. Okay. And then Ricky was originally supposed to go to NYCC, but then his finances got upside down. Shit happens to all of us. But now he's no longer going. He originally wanted to do the lava foil mosaic that we did for SuperCon. He wanted to do that as a regular foil, but now he's out of the equation. So I printed the foil of not only that book, but 4 other of my books. And those are my NYCC exclusives. I spent $9,000 just to be there between my hotel, bringing my guys up, renting a truck, and this shit is expensive. So this was a gamble, even going. So I printed as many of my books as I could in the hopes that people would respond up there the way they have up until that point.
What was that quantity?
I printed 100 Batman mosaics. I printed I think it was 200 of the Spider-Man, and then it was 50 each of Wolverine, Yoda, and Darth Vader. I didn't get Darth Maul done in time. I didn't know people would like it. Turns out they would have. So I'm at the show. I have one of the best times of my entire life. Nick's there. I don't talk to Nick because I know he doesn't want to talk to me, whatever. But, I never said this, and I never said this before because I forgot then. While I'm loading in the loading dock, they left us down there for like 6 hours in the loading dock. Everybody trying to load in. We're just stuck, right? While I'm sitting down there, Ricky calls me and tells me that Nick is going to take a shot at me. He's going to do so. He said Nick wanted to fly me up there to like go live in front of you and embarrass you or some shit. He was like, I'm just telling you as your friend, he's going to do something to try to fuck with your credibility or to fuck you up. He's going to take some kind of he's going to make an attack on your reputation and try to get you canceled or whatever the fuck. And I was like, well, let him take his best shot. We go the whole event. Nick doesn't say a fucking word to me, which is great for me. And then he's only like 4 or 5 booths away from me, one aisle over and down a few. So when all the curtains come down at the end, a direct shot. This dude's loading up his everything, his metal racks, all the shit that he had. He made 2 trips out on his cart by himself. I thought he had cancer that had metastasized to his liver some months back. Seems crazy to me that he's fit as a fiddle. That's just one bullet point as to why I made a future comment about the state of whether or not I believed he even had cancer.
Okay.
So he loads his shit out and he leaves. And then we do the same. We were waiting we had to get help. So we had to have the forklift come. So we were sitting there till like 10 p.m. So then the next morning, Monday morning, I see that he made an Instagram post about how he didn't say that I slighted him. He said that I slighted Ricky. He was like, people with no integrity, print runs, printing books that have already been printed, shitting on the community, in my boy Kiki Comics. And I'm like, what the fuck? So I texted Nick and I was like, do you need me to stop by your house on my way out of town? Do we got something we got to talk about? Yes, it was passive aggressive, but it was a way of trying to get him to talk to me since we hadn't talked since he'd been here August 27th. This is October 9th now. And the little eyeballs show up. I know he's seen it, but he doesn't say anything. And then we leave town. We check out of the hotel and we the 16-hour drive back to Florida. We stop in Jersey. We go to Kevin Smith's fucking comic shop. And when I check in there, 5 minutes later, Nick posts a video, this tough guy video. Oh, you want to stop by my house? Well, you think you got balls and all this, you know how he is. And I was like, all right, so now he's attacking me online. And all that did was just get me new Instagram followers, new people that want to tune in to see what's, so I don't pay him any mind. I don't respond to him publicly for the most part. And he goes on a 2-week tirade against me. So when you hear Bali talking about him bullying, that's what he's talking about. He's talking about 2 weeks, I stay silent, right? So now Epic wants to work with me for the first time, right? And he brings Nerdy Girl in. So the two of them want to work with me. And the first time I made a post about any of this, it was about the fact, remember I said those 10 sketch covers that Ricky took home with him? Well, he never paid me for them. And we did another show where we split screen and he didn't pay me for that either. And now he's using this situation with Nick to be, oh, well, I'm Team Nick now. And then he lied and said that I gave him those books for his trouble and that he didn't owe me anything, which is bullshit. So.
And this is Ricky that has the books?
Yeah, Ricky took the books with the intention that he would sell them and we would split the money. So now Ricky has drawn a line in the sand. He's Team Nick. He had he was trying to go back and forth between Nick and me. I was like, because I called Ricky, I was like, you need to get Nick to take this bullshit down because he's using your name to slander me. You know what I mean? With the oh, he's printing all these extra books and shit. And I'm like, well, you're letting him, if you don't tell him to take it down, then you're letting him use your name to slander me because he doesn't have a legitimate gripe with me. He just doesn't like me anymore because the way the fucking Ultimate Fake Out book went. And Ricky acted like, oh, well, I'm sick, and I didn't answer my phone because I was sick, and blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, he's Team Nick. He's going back and forth with Nick, and he's calling. When he calls me, Nick's on the phone, being silent and listening to my side. So then he calls me back, and he's like, well, let me talk to Nick. Well, Nick said that you made threatening messages to him. I was like, well, I said, do you want me to stop by your house so we could talk on my way out of town? He's like, well, what did you mean by that? And I was like, what does it sound like? I mean, if he's got something to say, he could say it to me. I could stop by. I don't know where he lives. I could stop by his house on the way out of town. So he's like, oh, well, it seemed like you were being aggressive. I'm like, well, I'm irritated. Of course, it's going to be a little bit aggressive. And then my guy that was driving, Jesse, said something that really pissed Ricky off, at which point he was like, oh, cat's out of the bag. I'm Team Nick. Fuck you, and I'll fuck you up, talking to my employee, Jesse, my buddy. So now I realize Ricky was just playing both sides to get, information for Nick. And for whatever reason, he decided he was going to treat someone who I brought this dude into my home, man. I mean, I held his young son while we ran shows, and his family's watching TV in my living room. And I split every fucking thing that we sold. We split 50-50, man. My hard work, I let him have free reign of the books in my shop. You ask anyone. They tuned into the shows, they saw it. They know. And he turned on me like this. At least, Nick, he was a maniac from the moment that I met him, but Ricky was someone who pretended to be my friend, enjoyed my charity and my good nature, and then turned around and stabbed me in the back. All right. So at least if like all this nonsense that's happened with Nick, none of it is a shock to me. As amusing and perplexing as it may be, none of it shocks me. Okay. But with Ricky, it fucking stung because I thought this motherfucker was my friend. So I don't know how we got to where we are now. Because I've worked with Epic, apparently Nick called Epic a bunch of times, begging him, don't work with this guy. This guy's a snake. He's a snake. He's going to do you dirty. He's going to fuck you over. And Bali was just like, bro, I'm going to work with the guy. don't quit, keep your drama over there. He's very good about saying what needs to be said, almost like a smack on the nose to a dog, without being caustic or acidic about it. He's like, you keep the drama over there. I'm gonna fucking work with Kyle, and he did, and everything went fine. And I think that pissed Nick off even more. So at this point, now I'm working with Epic. Nick's no longer a human being that I even think about. Occasionally, people that hear about the drama or see the shit for the first time will ask me about him, and I'll have a conversation. But I don't wake up and think about this fucking guy. I'm putting my energy into the relationships that are positive, and I'm working on the next project, and I'm servicing my customers and living my life. But apparently it's just for him. It's just been festering and festering. He went on the Pressable Defects show. I kind of glossed over that. That's the first time that I heard of the Pressable Defects. And all of them seem to have already made up their mind about it. Nick is like the guy, right? This show, if anybody watched that, did you watch that show, Matt?
No, I didn't see that.
You didn't see the Pressable Defects show when they had him on?
Yeah,
bro, it's three absolutely normal human beings in the four squares and a maniac, a fucking maniac. Every other word out of his mouth was no integrity for the people. Like he turned that shit up to 4 billion that day, and he looked. And so when you say you're inviting me on here tonight to say my piece, I don't feel like I've had to say any piece. You want to know what's going on? Go watch the NickGQ show. Go watch the fucking Pressable Defect show, because you just tune in and you'll know exactly who he is.
There's an interesting parallel here. So, with your interaction with Ricky is exactly how Nick characterizes his relationship with Bali, with Epic. And Epic also has a similar Ricky story. So the common thread that everybody seems to have in common here is Ricky.
Okay. Well, I mean, I haven't spoke to Ricky or thought about Ricky in months. So if he's a common thread, he's no longer a thread that weaves through any fabric of my life.
Right. But it's interesting to me, and being, again, you described kind of another parallel event of there being three, like regular guys ready to talk about comics, and then a fourth person, and the show went from that point became a completely different show.
Where was this?
This was on Thorough's show, which is what kicked off what we're going to talk about very shortly.
Yeah. Are you talking about when Nick was on the other night?
Yes.
Yeah, when Nick and Bali were both on.
So I didn't realize you talked about me in the beginning of that. So the whole time when that came out, I'm at Fan Expo New Orleans. So I skipped ahead because I can only watch so much of it. I'm at the show, But I put my earpods in and I skip to the point where Nick shows up, and I listen to him, and then it just becomes I almost felt bad. Like, why did Bali even go on there? At this point, he's just frustrated or whatever, and it just evolved or whatever. But there is no talking to NickGQ. There's just no talking. So I don't know why he bothered to try. He couldn't talk to him on the phone. Why did he think that he'd be able to talk to him? I don't know. Maybe so that Nick would talk to him in public the way he talked to him in private, so other people could see the way Nick acts. But I did see when Nick came on first, before Bobby came on, he was like, I don't want to talk or cuss or any of that, because that's animalistic, So he must have been prepped. Hey, don't be the fucking guy you were last time you came on to a show, because you nobody could take you seriously. So now at least he attempted to sound like a person, But he admitted in that video, that audio, that call, that he doesn't feel feelings. So I guess I don't know if he is a person, if he's pretending to be a person. I don't fucking know.
So Kyle, that's actually that reminds me of something you said earlier. And while we're talking about calls and listening into calls, you mentioned that when you were talking to Ricky, you knew Nick was listening. How did you know Nick was listening?
Because Nick used things that I told Ricky against me.
Okay.
Immediately. And I will say another thing, like even the two of them as they were forming this bond and moving forward. When remember when I told you when Nick was coming here, he was in the Uber coming from the airport to my shop. He was like, "Do you have drinking problems or something?" Like in Nick's mind, Nick was right. Nick felt like he paid me, and he should get all these books. Like I truly believe that he believed that he was right in his mind. My fucking eyes are watering at this point. So he takes me, and we're in the kitchen talking, so none of the customers can hear or whatever. And he was like, "Well, Ricky told me that you got a drinking problem." And I was like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" And he goes, "Here, I'll prove it to you." So he fucking goes, "Don't say anything." And he calls Ricky on speakerphone without Ricky knowing that I'm listening in. And he's like, "What'd you say to me before about Kyle? Did you say you say you had like a drinking problem or something?" And he's like, "Nah, I mean, he had a couple of beers every time I see him, but I don't know that he has a drinking problem or anything." Like, that's just a thing. That's the kind of people that they are. I would never think of doing that. It's conniving. It's whatever. But when you talk about Bali making that recording, when I went to Big Apple Con, Bali brokered that deal. So you could call him my handler for that show. Okay? I'm looking that way because I have two monitors. My camera.
Eye lines are all messed up.
You can consider him my handler for that show. And Nick knew I was coming up there because the show was promoting me as a guest. Bali got me as a guest. They put me up in a hotel. This is taking place. You've been to Big Apple Con? Do you go? It was at the New Yorker Hotel across from Madison Square Garden. What an honor that they allowed me to be one of their guests. So now Nick is calling Epic going, "Well, what room's he staying in? Tell me what room's he staying in." Because now I'm working with this brother figure of Nick's, and Nick feels that is a transgression against him. But I think he still had enough love for Bali that he didn't want to take it out on him, but he wanted to kill me now. So he's like, what's his room number? He's like, "I'm not going to tell you his fucking room number." But when he started talking about wanting to get a shot at me, that's when he started recording. He used a different phone to record the cell phone where the phone call was taking place. So that was the catalyst for, why is this boy, if they're boys, why is he recording his phone call? Because he's talking about finding my fucking hotel room number, right? So Bali calls Carbo, Mike Carbonara, and asks them, is it possible to move Kyle to another hotel? Because Nick knows I assume because Nick knows all the guests are staying at that hotel. So he fucking moves me to the Crowne Plaza. So I'm kind of irritated because I got friends that are coming to the show. They're staying at the New Yorker. They're like, "Hey, we're all staying there together." I'm like, "They actually moved me." And they're like, "Why?" I'm like, "I don't really know. Oversold the rooms or some shit. I don't fucking know." But it was because he didn't want Nick to be able to take a shot at me. He told me that Nick wanted to know my room number, but he didn't tell me that he had this audio call recorded. I found out about that call being recorded while I was in Fan Expo this past weekend.
And Kyle Elliott sent you that video.
Bali sent me the video.
Okay. So now another interesting thing. So in the call where Bali and Nick were screaming at each other, Bali is Epic for people who aren't familiar. He had said that Nick had threatened him, and that's why he was taping his phone calls with Nick. But it's evident, you've obviously heard it, and it's evident that that's not the case. That he never threatens Bali, and it's evident from the tone in their conversations, at least from the portions that we've heard. We don't have an unexpurgated version of this recording. It's broken up. There's different parts. There's obviously
Did you say expurgated?
Unexpurgated. So
unexpurgated. Can everybody write that down, please? It's going to be on the final.
So we have no idea what the length of the entire recording is. We don't know where the beginning of it actually starts, where the end of it actually is.
Now, Kyle, have you heard more of that video that's out there?
I've got, to my knowledge, it was split into two pieces because they wouldn't all fit through WhatsApp. If it was edited so that there were things that I didn't get to hear, I don't know. I assume no, because they overlap. The one video overlaps with the other one. There's, where it ends, the other one starts right before that. So I don't think so, but I don't know. And I for sure don't know what was said on that phone call that would cause Epic to start recording. Anything before the recording started, I don't know what Nick said.
Right.
All I know for a fact is Bali had my hotel moved, which is he had to go. That was a pain in the ass. He did that without telling me why, right? And then we left the show early. Now I was sick while I was there, so that was convenient because he made it seem like we were leaving because I was sick. But I didn't ask to leave early, so I'm like, I mean, I'm not the only one leaving early. It was a fucking entourage of us, and Johnny Desjardins didn't have to leave early. But now we're all leaving early. Like the showrunners were upset. We left over an hour before the show was over. And now I assume that we left early so that NickGQ wouldn't have, himself or other people looking for me to get into my Uber to leave the place, which is what he said he was going to do on that video or on that audio recording.
I'm guessing that he wrote treats but meant threats.
Threats, I think, yeah.
But so so since Bali's in the chat here, so when he was talking about how apparently there's multiple recordings because what he had said in their screaming match was that that he had started taping him because he had made threats against him. And so when Kyle Elliott dropped the video on his YouTube with the kind of edits that included edits from the Thorough show that we were all on, it didn't seem to speak to the cause that we had been given as a reason why he was taping. And now talking to you, you don't know why he began taping. And so it's when we were on the show, and I made a really big point after that show, and I can't remember honestly if it was later on that very first show or the next day where I was back on Throw's show to be like, what the hell just happened? And this was before Kyle Elliott released the video that we've all seen. You've seen a version of it that we haven't, which doesn't have the other footage on top of it. You've seen it, as you said, in two pieces, but that's not what has been made public. And as I was talking about, I said, I want to be really careful to say during that conversation, and Bali was smoking the hookah, and he has an accent, and the accent was a little difficult for some of the people that were in the chat to understand what he had to say. And I said, I want to make it really clear that this doesn't turn into, and that it didn't turn into a kind of like immigrant bashing situation, because I don't think it was that he was difficult to understand necessarily because of his accent, but in his cadence, in his speech, in his excitability. And so it really, he escalated much more quickly on that show than did Nick, who mainly kept it together a bit. And so of all of us being on the show together, Nick came off certainly as the more level-headed person, which I know from your experience is probably counter to what you've described. I have watched some of Nick's live streams. Oh no, I didn't say I wanted the full 2 videos, Kyle. I said you should send those to the police. In the interactions. Yeah. I was talking to you. I'm sorry that he pulled up on screen Kyle Elliott's quote. So 2 Kyles, so confusing, and I apologize. But Kyle.
By the way, a lot of people are confused about that. A lot of people think Kyle Willis is the one that posted that video. That is not the case.
No,
right.
One little clarification.
I woke up the later in the day. I guess Del Guzman shared it on social media. So when I woke up, I have 40 messages. Are you okay? You okay? I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah. So when Kyle, and actually I was confused when Kyle Elliott had posted the video. I also was thinking that Kyle Elliott was you. And so I contacted him. And I'm like, you need to bring this recording to the police. That's what I said to Kyle Elliott. And then and someone posted a lot of people posted a lot of stuff as Instagram posts and as stories that used elements of that show, of them just going off on each other, when it really, really devolved into absurdity. And at that point, Red Hood had started like bringing toys up into.
I remember you saying, "Oh, this killing me with the, or maybe it was a comment. He's killing me with the clothes or whatever.
And we were just like, we were like hiding our faces because that was so absurd. While these two other guys are going bananas.
Sorry to interrupt you, but make no mistake, this whole shit is absurd. This isn't how I want any fan to tune in and see me. This isn't what I want to be known for. I don't want to be on the show right now. This is very reluctant me coming on here.
Sure.
But if anybody thinks that there's an unanswered question, I'm here for it. So ask it in the chat.
And we appreciate that, by the way.
But my relationship with Nick started as one of me showing that man love. Not only did I bring him into my shop and I did a book with him on spec, hoping that we could make some money together, but I made that. Tell me in the chat if you've seen the NickGQ Was Here, the Living Legacy book that I put together for this man. Has anybody seen this book? Does anybody know what this book is?
No.
Well, I paid out of my own money. I paid an artist to do a cover. It was an Incredible Hulk #1 homage because I know Nick loves that book. And I did a skinny little Nick as we know him now. And then behind him is a gigantic Nick with that fucking whatnot belt of his. And I paid somebody else to color it. And I filled it. I made a book of a montage of this man's life. And I went back 12, 13 years of his social media, picking pictures from his nightlife days, from his wrestling days as a wrestling promoter. I even found a picture where he was like this. It was like a close-up, and he wrote the word power on his hand, and he made like this uplifting post. You got this. Whatever you're dealing with today, you got this. And I made that the back cover. You know what the centerfold of the book was? It was a fucking selfie that I took when we were out to dinner one of those nights in South Florida. It was me, Javon Jordan, my best friend Mikey, my employee Jesse, Ricky, Ricky's wife, Ricky's daughter, Ricky's son, and Nick. You know what I mean? And I printed this as a lava foil. I don't know how many of y'all get books printed at Artist Express, but they're $13 fucking a piece. I printed
especially
50.
in a small print run like that. I mean, you don't get your numbers down until you get into the thousands.
Bingo. I printed 50 of them. And when he showed up in my shop, even though there was that tension in there, I gave him those 50 books. And I was like, add this to the books that you could sell to raise money for your St. Jude's campaign. And you know what? Not one fucking time has anybody brought that up in all these months since August 27th, since he started online attacking me. Never once did we bring this up. Why? Because it doesn't fit the agenda that Kyle is the bad guy here. Well, you think what you want of me. I don't want to be everybody's cup of tea because that would be a boring life. But I never did this man wrong in any way. And it's preposterous to try to frame it as if though I did.
Right.
Or with me. All right.
Now, so when you heard the audio that that Bali had recorded, what was your initial reaction to hearing that recording? I mean, that recording is incendiary, and especially since you have a version that I don't have.
Okay, so
which is
I bounced all over the place a little bit, but he in that video he goes, he attacked my name, he attacked my cancer or whatever. So to frame that comment that he made, what he meant by that. After weeks and weeks of attacking me, I never blocked him on social media because I didn't want anybody to be like, I didn't want him to be able to say that, oh, he blocked me, he's probably talking shit or whatever. I want him to be able to see that I'm not talking about him on my own page, which I wasn't. But I commented, he said something in a public group attacking me. And he's attacking me while I'm fighting this cancer. And I was like, I don't know if I even believe that you have cancer. If anything, you have a black soul and your body's eating itself from the inside out. Something like that. Okay? Because I don't believe, at least to the degree that he said that he had the condition that he said that he had. But that doesn't matter. If that makes me a bad guy, fine. But yes, I did say that. I made that comment. So now that washes away all the bullshit and the lies about print. Because he said that I printed more of his Ultimate Fake Out book to take to NYCC. All the nonsense that it didn't fucking happen. But now none of those arguments, none of those things that he had against me matter anymore. The screenshot of this comment. Now this is the gotcha. You know, now Kyle. Now it's about this. It's not about his history with me anymore. Now this is his legitimate gripe, and he zeroed in on that like an ankle biter and sent it to everybody. You know.
So you feel like he sort of moved the goalpost just to have another reason.
So in that phone call when he's like, he attacks my my cancer, that's what he was talking about. That when he got real guttural and he was talking about that comment. And that comment, if you listen to Bali's reply, it's like, oh, you attack him for forever. Of course he's going to say something, and it did. It came after weeks and weeks of me shutting my mouth. And even the post when I was like, Ricky stole from me. I posted it in the Whatnot for Resellers group. I was like, or Whatnot Comics group. I was like, be aware, this dude is a thief. He's a thief and a liar. We did shows together. He took these 10 books. I posted the picture of those books. I was like, this man stole from me. Be aware, be advised, beware, don't do business with this guy.
And so it Ricky, was not Nick.
Correct. And it was comments on that post where Nick chimed in and kept going back and forth and, spreading his vitriol, that I finally commented and said, I don't even know if I believe you have cancer, bro.
So when you heard the recording and you heard, why don't you explain to me how you interpret what he said? And did you take it seriously, knowing him the way that you had? It sounds to me like what you've told us is that he would say things and then you would confront him about it. And then it would be like, oh, it's not really that, or, oh, it's something else. And then things would kind of be okay. And then they would go crazy
Did
again.
I feel like my life was in jeopardy hearing that video? No.
Okay.
I thought this was someone who watched too many episodes of The Sopranos and was talking like a tough guy. Okay. But I'm not the only person in my life. I can't hear that video and not share that with my wife. And now she's like, I don't want you to go back up to New York. I'm supposed to go back up to New York. I'm a special guest. Things went so well with Big AppleCon, even with me leaving early and I'm having to change my hotel, that now I'm going to be a special guest at the show that some of those showrunners are putting on later this month. They're flying me up. They're putting me up. I'm going to be a special guest. I'm dropping an exclusive for the show that the show is going to be selling. And I fucking finished painting the cover today, So I guess any little bit of success that I enjoy, in spite of Nick telling everyone not to do business with me, is a trigger for him. And in that video, he comes to my state. He thinks he's got bowls, so even me just being in the state of New York is a trigger for him. This is a dude that I don't think about. Okay. But because I'm working with Epic and he had this love, this love, the brotherly love for Epic, he sees not only is Epic working with me a second time, so now it's he's full on fuck Bali, fuck Epic, but me coming back to the state, my wife's like, you're not going up there. So I had to share the videos that Kyle Elliott shared on YouTube with the 109th precinct and made them aware. And I shared it with the Green Cove Police Department because I called them. Remember I told you Sergeant Milliken came over here? This guy. Well, I went the day before yesterday morning and I spoke to her partner and I had to get a case number, and explaining that there's more to this story. And I know that I'm the victim in my state, even though, everything's jurisdictional. And the cop was real with me. He was like, look, man, everything up there is going to be reactionary. If he comes to the event and he starts causing a ruckus, call the cops and know you can do whatever, get him trespass, whatever the fuck. So I just talked to the showrunners and it made them aware of what's going on. So all the security are going to have Nick's photo and all the vendors are going to have Nick's photo to make sure that he doesn't come into this event. He's not allowed with, to in the building. So right. I'm not worried about this guy. But that doesn't change the fact that he said he killed someone when he was 13 years old and said that I've been doing this for a long time. He didn't say this is something that I used to do. He's like, I've been doing this for a long time. Yeah. What does that mean? Don't be near that guy when he comes to town. I've been doing this for a long time. I mean, we can pretend that he didn't say what we all know he said, but I'm not a fucking idiot. So I'm not going to pretend that he didn't say what he fucking said. Like some people earlier tonight would love to their 3,000 subscribers. We all know what the fuck he said. All right. No, I think
when what Thorough was saying, and of course Thorough is a former police officer, is that when it comes to the letter of a threat versus the intent or implication of a threat, there's different legal parameters and what can be done about it. But as you saw, if you watched the show, we all were on the same page about what that means. And that if for no other reason, if a baseline of what we heard, and in the areas that were could not have been cut and manipulated, at least to my ear, that where the space was not cut and edited, where there are just like an uninterrupted audio, that he does say things that warrant investigation.
Sure.
And so, you know, I before that tape made it public, or at least before I was aware of it, when Bronze sent me a link to it, I got a message from Nick where he was talking about, and now they're posting a video of something. I didn't know what he was talking about at the time, and maybe it wasn't even that. It might have been something else, that that fake news. And that's kind of the extent of what he said. I reached out, and because the saddest part to all of this in the show where these guys were screaming at each other is that it was evident that these guys were very, very good friends, that they were calling each other brothers at a certain point, that this had something had completely devolved and the friendship was gone. And it was clear, and Nick had said so on the show, that, you know, he's not a guy that has friends. He says that on the video too. He's like, that's why I don't have anybody. And it was just like a really sad situation. And
it
so,
was,
you know,
and it is. Make no mistake. I'd love to go back to July 13th and be in the presence of that guy that I met, who was quirky, over the top, dude that turned it up to 11, maybe, you know. But before all this nonsense, I mean, it was. I like NickGQ. This whole thing is ridiculous, and I'm quite frankly, I'm at the point now where I'm over it, man. Focus on somebody else. There's got to be something else to do with the rest of your life than talk about Kyle Willis, because I'm not worth it. I promise you, I'm not worth it.
Well,
and now,
I mean, definitely. No, I did have a question that I wanted to make sure, you know, we did talk about wanting to answer some of the questions from chat. I think this is kind of an interesting one to broach a little bit here. Is Whatnot aware of this note? Have you had any conversations with Whatnot?
Whatnot is aware of the theft, but it didn't happen on Whatnot, and what doesn't happen on Whatnot ain't Whatnot's problem. Somebody said that in the other guy's stream. That's right. And you know what? Sure. But they were like, feel free to give us any evidence of him doing something that violates our terms of service, and we'll boot him the fuck out of here. But I don't care enough about these guys to sit around and watch them until they do something that breaches the terms of service, because guess what I'm doing? I'm living my own life. I'm painting. I'm doing cool shit. I'm hanging out with cool people. I'm flying to other states. I'm doing the opposite of what these two guys are doing, which is scamming people, lying, and riling themselves up for no reason.
Right. And did you you mentioned the I think there were 6 different covers.
5.
Yoda 5. And so they're all different covers for the same book.
They sure are.
Yes,
they sure are. So, and thanks to NickGQ, Marvel is aware of them, and somebody from Marvel bought one at NYCC.
And so the do you anticipate any legal action about it?
Absolutely not. Yeah, there's no comic in there. I'm not stealing anybody's characters. I'm homaging them by cutting up with an X-Acto knife thousands of little pieces of their comics. I got to buy their comics in order to make these things, right?
Gotcha. I understand.
These aren't photoshopped, and an alarming amount of people accuse me of doing it with Photoshop. So the one that I dropped at Big AppleCon, I went live on Whatnot and did it live for like a 2-hour segment. I filled in a lot of the pieces, you know, very slow moving. You take an X-Acto knife and a paintbrush, dip it in the wallpaper paste, and you kind of, you know, and no, they love
that comic didn't even really come up on that stream. He was the comic that was mentioned was that Simpsons Voltron cover thing was really seemed to be the crux of whatever problem that.
Well, that's outside of the purview of what I know about. I don't know anything about that. Then you get, you know, decor comments, and that has nothing to do with me. I can't comment on that.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's something
that clarifies a bit.
Spiraled. Just so you know, we're talking about who's in chat. We're all seeing it. So Ricky is here. At
Welcome.
this point, if you want to say anything, here's your chance.
Oh, I don't have anything to say to him.
Okay. Yeah, so this whole situation. I mean, I'm glad to hear how you've taken some of these comments, especially the video that Kyle Elliott posted. I guess what I'll say is in stride. But this is just such a, like I said at the start of the show, to me, the whole situation going back to, for me, where this all started, where it picked up on my radar was watching that Principal Defect show. And ever since then, I felt like this is just, I can't think of another way. It's just a black eye on this part of our community.
It is. And the sad part is that, sorry to interrupt, man.
No, go ahead.
Is that a lot of us sell on Whatnot. So everybody makes this a Whatnot issue, as if though Nick wasn't fucking crazy before Whatnot existed. You know what I mean? This isn't a Whatnot issue. It's more prevalent who's a batshit crazy and who isn't, because you're live during those shows and you get to tune in and see the person's character. But Whatnot is a vessel for, if anything, ousting people who are nuts, or people who are or anything. That's why Whatnot is so successful, because you could have 4 different streams of people selling the exact same new hot variant or whatever. Say it's the new Ninja Funk or some shit, right? But you're going to tune into one of those shows over the other 3 because you've gotten to know that person and you like the way they run the stream. They're either calm and collected, or they don't cuss, or they play the kind of music you like, or they need a new battery in their smoke alarm and it chirps all the time, whatever, So Whatnot's a tool. Just it's the same argument that the United States has with guns. Every time somebody gets hurt with guns, they want to take away the guns, and then the gun people are like, "Fuck you, you ain't gonna take my guns." You know what I mean? Whatnot is the gun. All right.
Whatnot's really more than a tool. It's a medium, and I think that's what makes it different. Is that as a medium, like cable television, like terrestrial TV, like radio, there are controls in place by the people who run these agencies that oversee such a thing, that prevent things from getting so totally crazy, that prevent people from saying, defamatory things on their programs.
Sure.
If you want to play music on any streaming platform, you have to pay for it. And we know that people have abused it. And we know that certain formats like YouTube have algorithms that are in place to shut down people from using copyrighted music without permission. When I was first going to be on that Thorough show, before it turned into that challenge into a boxing match and other things, and then everything else came out of it, the idea was that I was going to talk about 3 things that people do on Whatnot almost every day that are technically against the law, and that could open up the format Whatnot for legal recourse from people like Disney, because people are streaming entire Disney Plus shows. Like Warner Chapel Music.
They changed their terms of service literally today, right?
I know. I saw it.
Yeah.
As it came in, I was chatting with Bronze, and as it came in, I'm like, oh my God, I got the changes of terms here. And they addressed what I was talking about 2 days before, but they were also really about NFTs, because Quebec made NFTs sales. They're extremely regulated to the point of being practically illegal. And that was a major component of it. But it's interesting that the timing is interesting, but who knows why the timing is the timing that it is. Maybe they've been looking at this. I've mentioned it before, but so then it becomes this other stuff. But you're right. People have this option. What I think a lot of, the comic community, won't say the comic fan, because I think that carries a connotation of being a certain group of well-known comic book influencers, but the writ large comic family have a problem that Whatnot has become kind of a pusher of limited materials that get pumped and dumped like cheap stock. And that has mainly led the anti-Whatnot sentiment. I still buy on Whatnot. I buy stuff on Whatnot probably every couple of weeks. I've done business with sellers who are extremely reputable and do a great show. I purchased something where I needed to contact Whatnot and stop just short of filing fraud charges, because what he had described was absolutely not what was sent. And he lives 20 minutes from the other couple that I had such a great experience from. And, as I'd said before, in the Whatnot community, we're all 20-minute neighbors, basically, right? We're taking a global community. Everything's aligned and next to each other, and you can find what you want. But that's going to create a target, as you say. It shines a spotlight, we'll say, on certain activities, certain behaviors, but nothing gets done about them until it reaches a threshold of something like this, where they have to pay attention because now it's a PR problem. Well, and that's not usually how a media company would work.
I don't think anybody at Whatnot or me or you expected Whatnot to blow up the way that it did. This company's 2 years old? I heard of it. I heard of Whatnot because Jack DeMayo, aka Mr. Bolo, slid into my fucking Instagram DMs and had said, "Hey, longtime fan, I'd love to get you on this new app." So I thought he was a snake oil salesman, right? He onboarded me as one of the first 100 sellers of comic books on the app with a Instagram chat video. That's how I got brought on to Whatnot. You know what I mean? And I did my first show. I sold 2 books that I had hand-painted remarks on, and they sold for nothing. So I forgot all about the app. That was in July. Not this past July, but the July before. Skip ahead to February. The app's all anybody's talking about. They're coming into my shop. They're showing the Invincible covers and all this shit. And I'm like, what is this? Maybe we need to take a second look, And in that time, I've had to hire 2 employees to help me run shows. You know what I mean? It completely changed my little life and here in the middle of nowhere, Florida, and like any app or any business, there's going to be growing pains, and they're probably putting out 1,000 fires a day, and change is slow, First it was this, 50 cent each additional item shipping bullshit that had to change, and that had to change. And there's a lot of changes coming. I can't speak for the company, but I have seen changes come along the way. We haven't liked them all, but we didn't like it when they made it a law. We had to wear seatbelts, but now look how many less people are dying, So are they moving as fast as they should on certain issues? No. But I also don't know all the other fucking things going behind this multi-billion-dollar company that's only 2 years old, 2, maybe 3. I don't know. In the back end, there's growing pains with anything, And I have the utmost confidence that with time and the right feedback, they'll address everything as they can. I think that like any other business, they're putting their focus in areas where it's a gamble to put their focus in that area. So a lot of us, me included at times, go, why the fuck are they bothering with that when they should be doing over there? But it's not my company. And if I get to a point where I don't like it enough, I can leave. I don't have to be on Whatnot, but I am because I like it. I love engaging the people that come into my streams. They've become a fucking family, man. I had so many people at Big Apple Con come up to me, and I got to meet them in person. It was like meeting a family member I didn't know I fucking had, bro. This shit is, it's a blessing. It's a fucking blessing.
That sentiment is a thread that runs through everybody we've talked about. One of the best
experiences of my life at NickGQ. It was a fucking weekend of love, man. It was all Whatnot people, and even the attendees, bro. There was a VIP only lounge, but there was never a point where the motherfucker was locked, bro. The customers were coming up and having beers with us and watching people run streams. It was amazing, and it would have never existed if it wasn't for Whatnot. And they accepted me like one of their own, and it was like getting a hug from mom, bro. I'm fucking crying like a fucking idiot, But there's so much good about this app that I refuse to let the nonsense be a reason for people to take up stakes and pikes. It's a tool, and I have decided to use this tool to do cool shit, to put my shit into the hands of people that like it, and I don't feel like I'm overhyping anything of mine. I try to be humble. I let them know how much I appreciate them, and I fucking mean it when I say it.
Sure.
Real fast, I just have to address something that I see going on in chat. And first of all, Andrew, I appreciate your super chat. I'm pretty sure you did that just to get your message across. Still, I appreciate it. So here's the deal. And I said this at the beginning of the show. The reason that I wanted to bring Kyle on tonight, and really, this is a topic that to me, Kyle said he doesn't want to be on here talking about this stuff. I don't really this is terrible. I wish we didn't have to do this tonight. But what I do think is important, and I'm somebody who believes in fairness, and I believe in being a devil's advocate. I believe in hearing all sides of a story. I will tell you, it's literally what I said earlier. It's a miscarriage of justice to me that the one person whose story we really didn't get a chance to see on a YouTube stream when other people are talking for hours and hours about their experiences and they're saying things and they're telling their side of the story, we never got to hear that man's side of the story. So the point of bringing him on tonight was to talk about that. Yep. I fully understand that there are other perspectives. There are other people that have things that they want to add on. On top of all that, I made a quick question. I asked. He would prefer not to talk to Ricky. We're not going to do that tonight. This isn't a WWE stream. I'm not bringing on people to create drama here.
Like that, you know what? There's nothing to say there, man.
So at some point, Ricky, if you want to message me independently and you want a chance to say your piece, do it. I guess I don't know you from anything, but I'm not here trying to just stir up a bunch of drama. I'm here trying to give somebody a chance to tell their side of the story. That's what's important to me.
And it fills in certainly an absence of background to what we've already heard. And I think people have enough of different perspectives that they can either choose to make up their own minds about it or just completely move on, which is what I think we all want. My biggest concern was that nobody get hurt, that after what we heard, it was a possibility, certainly a possibility. And, that was what kind of kept this going, because there was no fail-safe in place, we'll say, to guarantee that nothing would happen. And I think we're closer to that than we were before, and that's a good thing.
Hopefully, after this video, people are sick of my voice and they would prefer me to go back to painting. But if I'm going to say anything else on this show tonight, it's if you have anybody that you like what they do, focus on that. If you got people that do shit the right way, focus on them. 100%. Don't leave the guy that does it the wrong way. Don't go make a video about him. Don't even, tell your friends, beware of this guy, but fuck that guy. Focus on the people that are doing it right? Focus on the positive. Yeah. Because you get way more flies with sugar than you do with shit. All right. So, let's quit. Everybody's tuning in for these clickbait videos because they want to see the drama. Fuck the drama. I definitely don't want to be a part of this. I don't ask for this. I don't post about him. I don't think about him. I want to move on with my life. And I suggest he do the same. I'm not worth it, Nick, if you're watching. And man, focus on good vibes. Do groovy shit. Make your life fucking awesome. We don't got time for this garbage.
That's genuinely good advice.
Yeah, for sure. Generally here and elsewhere, right? Here in this hobby and elsewhere. And a reminder to any of the Whatnot sellers in the chat, read the new terms of service. Become familiar with the new terms of service. There are penalties that you need to be aware of for breaking the terms of service, many of them financial. Also, they have the ability to change the terms of service infinitely without necessarily notifying you, so that it's your responsibility to check in from time to time. I saw somebody in the chat saying that they thought that it was the only thing that was off was you couldn't play copywritten music. Basically, every piece of music is copywritten unless you're working with public domain or no rights managed stuff. But you also can't be watching movies. You can't be watching streaming television shows. A lot of
NFL games.
Yes.
Can I say, if anybody that's watching this video is a seller, we did find tonight a Spotify channel for copyright-free music. So that's what we played during our stream today. So you're not forced to have a silent stream. Also, if you have any local fans, get their permission, play their music during your streams. That way,
which is awesome to do.
That way you get to pimp out your friends and give them a little, hey, what are you listening to? We're listening to, Still Fire Bellows. They're in Jacksonville, Florida. They're fucking awesome, So they're not going to force you to be in silence. Just you're going to have to put a little bit more thought into it. No big deal.
I'll share something about that. So in my videos, I do a lot of pre-recorded videos. A lot of stuff I use is, everything I use is copyright-free music. Now, something that has happened to me, and this is a very common thing on YouTube, and I'm really curious to see how this is going to play out on Whatnot, is you will have companies that then go buy up the rights or just upload the music, and then they say, well, we have a copyright to that. It's on our channel. That is our music, that we are the right holders. And they'll perform copyright strikes on other channels. Yeah. And then they'll start taking the monetization from those channels for those videos. So think about it. If you've embedded music in your video, you'd have to go back and try to remove that music, or this company can now claim all the money from your monetized YouTube videos. And that's something I've had to deal with.
Yeah.
Yes. And I am curious to see how this affects Whatnot, because I know a lot of sellers. In fact, Whatnot actually on their official Discord made a post about this like 15 minutes ago. We're not saying you can't play music. We're saying you can't play music you don't have the right to. They made that clarification for kind of the Cliffs Notes version. Well, what's going to happen is people are going to turn to a lot of, Spotify playlists, different things. And I'm curious, when some of those repercussions start to happen from, finding out that some of that music, even just if it's on that playlist, may not actually be music that you have the right to use. It's a dicey situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's my wife right there. Highlight her comment if you can, because somebody asked what the name of the stream was, and then she responded because I didn't want to interrupt.
Is it Beth here?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah,
perfect.
That's so
we'll highlight that. And hi, thanks for letting us borrow Kyle for a while.
Bro, the fact that she's up at 1:15 in the morning is unheard of. Not for 10 years they should be up this late.
Yeah, I will say that the Whatnot situation, I haven't streamed on Whatnot in months now out of moral objections, I'll call it. I'm trying to avoid Whatnot. It's funny to hear you talk about Drip earlier. I actually do occasionally stream on Drip, but I primarily just go on my YouTube channel now as my primary way to sell books or whatever. It's an interesting time. Whatnot, I think something you said, Kyle, that I agree with is I think Whatnot just kind of automatically gets labeled as sort of this boogeyman. And I think that's kind of overblown to a certain extent. But at the same time, I don't think you can completely excuse them from some of the blame and some of these things, because they've taken a pretty light hand to dealing with a lot of the drama that has come out. Or even worse in some cases, they've kind of gone on the attack and said, this has nothing to do with Whatnot. Whatnot can't be involved in this in any way, shape, or form, without owning up to the aspects that maybe they do have some say and control over, that they should probably be taking some ownership of. So it's an interesting topic right now. Obviously, a lot of the community is polarized, as with everything in today's world, it seems like, on whether or not Whatnot's the worst or whether or not it's awesome. And I think that what you said about supporting the artists and supporting the people that you want to support, if you have a good feeling about somebody, they've shown you that they're honest. They've shown you that, they're worthy of your time and your money. Man, that's the best possible advice I could give to. I'm glad you said that.
Yep.
So, as it is fairly late over on the East Coast, I do want to ask if there's anybody in chat that does have questions for Kyle. Again, I'm going to ask that you be respectful when you ask those questions, but I know he wanted to have a chance to clear up anything that people wanted to know. Let's get those in now. If I somehow missed you earlier, repost that question in chat if you'd like to. Especially for Kyle. So I guess I got to ask, how do you feel about going forward as being a seller on Whatnot, Kyle?
As far as the new terms of service?
Yeah.
I mean, as far as the music is concerned, we've already jumped through that hoop and over that hurdle. Somebody came into my chat and said something about there's going to be another fee. I don't know if they're charging the user.
Sellers can add their own.
No, not that. There was somebody said something about a $3.99 plus 30 cents fee that they're gonna for credit card processing that they're charging to, like, or 3% plus 30 cents that they're gonna start charging to the buyers now, or something. I was in the middle of a show and I had a guest here who had come up from 2.5 hours away to sign books. So I didn't get that yet, but when I printed my tickets from the show, it was 11.9%. It was 12%, like it was supposed to be. So I assume he meant that the buyers are now having to pay that. So I'll have to look into that. But I mean, it's still the biggest platform, best platform that I've sold on. So I'm not going anywhere for the foreseeable future. And they did. Bali did do an 8-hour stream, and he was a bad boy. So he makes a lot of money on Whatnot. And then you know what he's not doing for the next 7 days? Anything
Making
on
money.
Whatnot.
Yeah.
He can't even comment on Whatnot. He can't log in. He can't cash his money out. Can't do anything for 7 days. So.
So Comics Corp Promotions is asking, do you have a Diamond account? And why not avoid all this drama and just do official Marvel exclusives as you're an artist and split the cost with Key King, etc.?
Because I'm a fucking nobody. So I'm starting small. I did covers for Scout Comic. You don't just jump into Marvel as a no one. You got to get approved. You got to have a body of work. So I'm paying my dues. I don't only release my sketchbooks and my mosaic books. I do covers for a lot of the indie creators, indie scene people that I meet at the shows. I'm going to do a cover for Trevor Linkavich that I just met this past weekend. Haven't done hopefully in time for MegaCon. I did cover for the Recount for Scout Comics. I did a cover for Department of Truth for Image. So, you don't just jump into the bloodstream, man. You got to get on the on-ramp. So I'm currently on the on-ramp. Yes, I have a Diamond account. Yes, I have an account with Penguin. Hopefully, we'll get a Marvel. Bali's trying to broker a deal to get me to do a Batman cover. We'll see if that happens. That would be great. So I'm all in.
Awesome Sauce Radio, by the way, Awesome Sauce. I know that you're visually impaired. I did highlight your super sticker you had earlier. I appreciate that. Not sure if you got an alert about that, but Awesome Sauce Radio would like to know if you're currently accepting commissions.
I am. If you go to cowabungacomics.com with a C, cowabungacomics.com, and you type in Kyle Willis, you can see my art that's available, my remark options, and my commission options. And thank you for asking, because I didn't want to plug myself on here.
No, for sure. And by the way, both of our guests, I did include links to go check them out. Kyle has a link tree that's available in the description below. Go check that out. You can see.
You can follow me in all the places.
Yeah. And then I also got a couple links below for Matt to check out a couple of his sources and Pop Sequentialism.
You got to follow.
Yep. Throw the follows. Show everybody some love, guys, for all their attention tonight. Also, will there be a second energy card? If so, where would it be? Energy card. I'm not sure what that means. Do you know what that means? No? Okay. Might be a typo or something. Okay. Well, I think that does seem to wrap up most of the questions. Matt, was there anything that you wanted to ask that we didn't get a chance to get to?
No, I just, I want to say that, thank you, Kyle, for coming on. And I think it was a good opportunity to kind of hopefully put this to bed, right? I think that's kind of what we're aiming at here. But also, I wanted to make sure that, because, when we were doing the show on Thorough, there was never any idea that what would come out of that came out of it. And I wanted to make sure that I didn't misrepresent anybody in any way. I don't think I mentioned you at all in either of the two shows. Most of it was just trying to be kind of like, I think someone called me in the comments then like the high school principal trying to like keep the two kids apart for a lot of that first show. And the second show was just kind of like, in a weird way, kind of armchair quarterbacking it and trying to make sense of it. And there does seem to be just like a group of people that have a certain behavior pattern that all knew each other, that don't want to know each other anymore. And hopefully that's the end of it, and obviously I wish you, great luck and good success, not only as an artist, but as an LCS owner, which in the world we live in right now is not quite a unicorn, but not as common as it was at its height. A tough business to be in, and you know, hope that you're doing well and continue to do well. And obviously, if you get up to the, you know, the position of doing DC and Marvel stuff, that's going to be fantastic for you. Another thing that I would mention is one of the things that I specialize in Pop Sequentialism is selling artwork. Done a lot of exhibitions for comic artists and fine art contexts, and have brought a lot of people's artwork up to comic art fans, where it reaches the largest online database of people that actually buy comic art. So, you know, I'd be happy to kind of introduce you to some of the folks over there if that's something that you want, if you even have the inventory, because, you know, if you're selling everything you draw, there is no inventory to have to worry about selling.
I appreciate the offer. Maybe in the future. Absolutely. I'm very, very, very fortunate that I've built some relationships that I do find myself low on inventory at any given time. Even my most recent mosaic is sold. I'm sure you saw the Mario. I took it with me to Fan Expo and had Charles Martinet, the voice of Mario, sign it. It's coming with me to Cosmic Con, and it's sold. So I've got it sold. I got a buyer, and I'm taking it up there. I send some of my stuff up to, are you familiar with Little Giant? They do the old school comic show in New Hampshire. Yep. I've got artwork hanging there. So, and it sells really well out of there. So I'm very fortunate. My hope is that in the next year, I could get to the point where I no longer have to do day-to-day at the shop, and I can be in my home studio and just grinding, because I do get the most fulfillment out of life when I am being creative. And this is the thing that used to get me kicked out of class, and now it has made this extraordinary life of mine possible, and I'm so fucking grateful for it. And I want to do it more and more and more and more and more. And it doesn't feel like work, you know. It feels like I'm at play, and I feel blessed all the time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So thanks for having me. I'm going to bed.
Yeah, well-deserved night of rest. Thanks again for coming on here, letting everybody know, you know, kind of let's hear that important side of the conversation. I'm very grateful for you taking the time to come on and do that. Thank you so much, Kyle.
Absolutely. You fellas have a great night. Bye-bye.
You too, Kyle. So, Matt, I don't know how you're doing for time, but I'm going to stay alive for a little bit longer. I don't know if you're interested in sticking around. Sure.
Happy to stick around.
Okay, great. Excuse me. There's that cough I've been trying to mute the entire time. You know, there's a few other things going on around this topic that I don't think we need to have. You know, Kyle needs to get to sleep.
Right.
I don't think it's necessarily necessary to have him on here for some of these points. I did want to highlight a couple things that happened in chat. Sorry, Awesome Sauce. Looks like you were asking about NerdyCon. I'm hearing rumors that Danielle wants to do a convention in Vegas.
She said that. Yeah, I saw her say something about that. I can't remember if it was on Thorough's show or somebody else's, that she was looking into doing a Vegas show, which is, I live in Vegas, so it'd be a perfect opportunity for me to finally meet Danielle.
Yeah, I know a lot of folks in the comic sphere that are based out of Vegas. So that is, you know, that could potentially be something pretty cool. I will just come out and say this, because I haven't really had a chance to talk about that. When it comes to the NerdyCon thing, man, I saw so much negativity about, like, it was almost like it was cool to hate on NerdyCon, like it's automatically a big failure because it wasn't a regional convention or something. Like, I don't know, like I can take everything else out of it. I don't understand that. It seems like people that were there had a good time, from what I understand. And
small shows are fun, you know. Yeah. Honestly, small shows, you can talk to all the guests. You know, it's easier to be a bit more leisurely in looking through somebody's art book to buy original artwork. You know, you don't feel sandwiched in and as rushed in your shopping. So I completely agree with you there. I like small shows.
Yeah, I don't think anybody went to it expecting it to be. Maybe there's some stuff I don't know. Maybe there was some promises that weren't delivered, or some vendors that were supposed to be there that didn't show up or something, and people, you know, were trying to get their money back. Maybe some of that stuff happened. I haven't heard any of that. Most everything I've heard is either haha, look at that, or hey, we had a good time. So
I think a lot of it is still a hangover from C2E2, that I think that a lot of people used that whole unfortunate scenario as an excuse to hate on a group of comic book quote unquote influencers. And you know, oh, there's Nick. Hey, Nick. Um, and I think that it's still there, and I think that it's maybe narrowed to an accentuated amount of unnecessary criticism aimed specifically at, you know, Daniel's certainly one of those people. I think some people are still really unloading on people like Gem Mint and Comic Tom. And I think it's, you hit a certain, you know, peak, you know, and you become the target, right? And so if someone has a problem with someone's success, then there's definitely going to be some backlash. But I think there's also things that certain sellers do which have a tendency to rub people the wrong way. And there's a difference between having a brag post or a lifestyle post versus a hobby post and a wow, I feel really blessed kind of post. And
Yeah.
I think some people who have a, we'll call it an influencer's mentality, and not a comic book influencer's mentality, but like a what we used to call people who are famous for nothing, right? This idea of I'm famous and I need to act a certain way, and it's not maybe the way that I acted before. I've changed my persona online. Any of those types of things can draw the ire of the community at large. And I think that some people get away with it and some people just don't, you
Yeah.
know, and it's unfortunate, but there's ways around it, you know. There's tone control.
Yeah, and I think that's, being, totally transparent, something we've had a conversation about before, and um a topic I think would be great for its own stream at some point, or even just a recorded video, is kind of getting some of our thoughts out on that. But it is this thing where you hit it so well, the nail just right on the head there, with this kind of lifestyle, kind of approach that we see certain content creators take. And I think there's a direct correlation between, success through social media. What is the baseline? What is the model that people see for success? It's a lot of things where you're talking about these people that have multi-millions of followers.
Yeah.
And what do they start doing? They start doing, product placements. They start doing, hey, check out my new car. Hey, check out this trip I'm on. And to a certain extent, that's social media in general. Everybody wants to kind of, well, not everybody, a lot of people want to share kind of the highlights of their life, like it's a highlight reel.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about, yeah, like you talked about, you're following somebody and you're seeing like, hey, they just picked up that cool new key they were after. That's really awesome. I feel like a genuine amount of excitement for this person, and I'm invested. I've bought in. And then a year and a half later, it's check out my new Porsche, or whatever it might be, and
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with that in itself, but it is a tone problem. It is is this, are the people that followed me from the beginning still interested in what I'm doing? And it's also going to provide like an automatic backlash for people too, because there's people that just don't enjoy seeing that.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to kind of, put it in a stereotypical box and just say that's what that is, and I'm going to hate on that now. And I'm not even going to blame people for doing that, because sometimes that's kind of the attention that some of that deserves.
And there's also kind of that if we take success, or if we take personality, and we look at it the way that you look at making like a new role-playing game character, right? Like you've got strength, you've got wisdom, you've got intelligence, you've got constitution and dexterity, and you're rolling dice, and you have certain high numbers here and certain low numbers here that kind of dictate what type of character, what kind of class you have to be, whether you're going to be a fighter, whether you're going to be a cleric, whether you're going to be a thief. And I think that what plays into celebrity of any size, whether it's writ large in a Kardashian kind of way, or writ small in this niche hobby that we have, appearance is a big part of it. And I think
Mhm.
we tend to cut a lot of slack for people that we find classically, universally attractive. Now, attractive has many different facets. There's someone's physical appearance, there's someone's personality, and then there's other quantifiable things like, do you like their sense of fashion? Do you like the
Right.
content they create? Are they writing their material well? Enthusiasm is huge in this hobby. And so when you look at top tier content creators in the comic book space, you see backlash against people that that have a slightly more caustic or deliberate delivery of their material than a more reasoned or a more uplifting one.
Yeah.
So if you were to take and by no means do I mean to use this as an opportunity to pass judgment on an individual. I'm speaking about this in the most general terms of how psychologically we assess people when we look at them. We look for certain features. We look for distance of the eyes. We look for the C-shaped smile rather than the U-shaped smile, which the human eye finds more attractive.
Yeah.
And things like that. And so, like, if you were to compare people in the hobby, there are some people that are, you might say, consensus very, very attractive. But if they were very attractive and had a terrible personality and their content was, not the best or depressing or authoritative, then that would detract from whatever attractive points they have. On the other hand, if someone is, baseline middle and the personality is middle, and then the lifestyle element is elevated, then they're going to be a target for the types of criticism that we're talking about.
For
And as
sure.
I say, there's ways to massage that. You work with your own strengths. I'm certainly not Brad Pitt, and I don't have the caffeine energy of a comic Tom, and I consider that a good thing, but I don't denigrate what he does. He's built an amazing platform. I
Yeah.
used to really, really be into watching it, and at a certain point, I just sort of drifted away because it seemed like he was shouting at the audience when he was talking about stuff, and it reached that caustic limit for me. But I think he's an amazing content creator. Whatever other issues people have are related to business practices and favoritism that they anticipate that he gets because he built a huge platform, and because platforms like Whatnot want to work with these people and give them special privileges. So
I would also
think,
add one other thing to that, which is
Sure.
potentially integrity issues, or at least perceived integrity issues.
Absolutely, and that builds into their business practices and probably the type of content that they produce. And I'm sure any one of these little tiers could break off into diamonds that you could look at the different facets. But it's so I feel like if there's people that are getting targeted in the community, rather than them blame the community for hatred, they should kind of look a little bit inward and see if there's something that's drawing that. Maybe the answer is no. Maybe it's just unfortunate. Some people get attacked, and it sucks. And then if that's the case, then rally those other troops, those other people that and have them on the show, and just make really, really good content together. Then as part of a good team, you can kind of go back out again, like when you've sort of massaged whatever personality issues or complaints that the public might have.
Well, and another aspect I think that bears mentioning is that I think sometimes people forget, or they have a blind spot towards understanding that some people out there, some of us, enjoy drama. They enjoy attention that comes from that drama. And while they are possibly, reacting negatively towards being called this, that, or the other thing, and that's very understandable, they may also enjoy being in that space to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that for most people, that reaches a tipping point where that's no longer an acceptable. The attention to positivity kind of bubble is kind of imbalanced at a certain point there.
Sure.
And I think that's something that, maybe some of these people kind of start to discover once they get past a certain point, that, hey, this isn't cool, the kind of message I'm receiving, instead of one in every 20 messages. And it is rough being I'm a very small YouTube channel, but I still get negative comments, it still gets directed at me. It's not necessarily the most fun thing to read sometimes. But you kind of take it into consideration. But if it's one in every 100 comments, that's a lot different than it's one in every 5 comments or every other comment. That can start to wear on people for sure. That's a very real thing that happens.
There's, we're looking at how depressed, kids are because they've grown up in social media. And there's direct correlations between the amount of prescriptions of psychotropic drugs, and the treatments of mental illness, and then the other problems that build out of a generation that's grown up on, these types of drugs, whether it's Xanax or some other kind of quasi-opiate. Adam had a really good comment where he was, asking, or do the attackers get no blame? The attackers do, but I think like it's dangerous to shine a light on the attackers because you make celebrities out of them. You're better off targeting groups, like if there's groups of people that are heaping a bunch of, hatred upon a certain channel, you can block them. Like I've never understood, Kyle was talking about, like, I didn't block this guy because I didn't want people to blame me for blocking him and maybe talking trash. But I think that, yes, Thor didn't say that he loves drama. He did say that drama sells. But, want to be careful about the accuracy of how we're quoting and misquoting people, which seems to be a huge source of the problem that we're addressing. But I think, if you give too much attention to an individual leader of the opposition, then you're giving them fans and you're giving them a bigger voice. So, yeah, I think that, the attackers are not good people. But we can't automatically say that their complaints are illegitimate. I think that frequently, this is an opinion medium, and a lot of people don't have good things to say, and it sucks. My greatest advice to most people is don't read the comments. But when you're doing a live show, you have to read the comments. As a guest, I don't have to, I did want to be sure because I'd seen Kyle Elliott had posted something, and he sent me something. I haven't had a chance, obviously, to look at it, but I will, and I'll get back to him about it. But and in so doing, I saw that Adam's statement. But it does get worse if you go after them occasionally. So you have to kind of figure out what your audience is and what your purpose is. And sometimes that means you go away for a little while. But if you've staked your career on being a personality in the public eye, then you have to really figure out if this is for you, because there's going to be haters. And the best you can do is produce the best product and put the best stuff out there. Have integrity, believe in what you're talking about. And even in playing devil's advocate, there's an honesty to that and saying, well, hey, I want to cover all bases. So what if I say this? What do you have to say about that? I think that that's missing in a lot of what we're talking about when people don't, kind of go head on into the fight. And sometimes it reaches that level where you do have to headlong go into the fight, but you got to know who you're fighting, what the fight is, what the objective. Can you win that fight? If someone's position is, I don't like you, short of asking them, oh, why don't you like me? And their answer is because I hate you. That's never going to change. Like, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's an Ouroboros of negativity. And so you can't pay them any mind. So to the extent that you can block them, you can block them. I know people will open up new accounts, but if there's no dialogue to be had there, it's useless to have that dialogue. I say, and I said it is the position that I think elicited the comment, is that you are good to look in and say, okay, am I doing something wrong? Don't have just a bunch of yes people around you saying, no, you don't do anything wrong. Try and figure out, workshop your stuff. Try and figure out what works and what doesn't work. But again, it's hard to critique somebody who's got, 1 million followers and say that they're doing something wrong. But if they're spending a lot of time reading the comments and a lot of the comments are hate, some of those comments, because it's views, are making them money anyways. And it may be easier to draw that hate as a means of making money. So
and to bring it back to the topic we've kind of been talking about a lot recently in the community. That's one of the funniest things about this is you talk about what's happening to some of these individuals. Some of the greatest shit to ever happen to their brand is happening right now because they're getting exposure. And whether or not, that's a good thing, it really depends on what your objective is, of course. But for some of these people, the objective is to get eyeballs into their streams or whatever it might be. Think about it. Some of these people, and I'm not even going to name names, but some of these people, next time they go live, they're probably going to have more people watching because they want to see what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
Kind
the
of plays
train
into
wreck,
a lot of the
mentality.
The
neck crane, the rubbernecking on the side of the road.
Yeah. Real fast too. I neglected a comment that Al Martinez, a question he asked earlier. It's got to be up here, and I want to make sure that I answered your question out because I feel bad. I missed it twice apparently. Could somebody educate me in the community? I bought a Kyle Willis ASM exclusive, limited printing in FloridaCon. Wouldn't wouldn't the reprint at New York Con kill or devalue the exclusive? Just real fast, I'll just try to address that a little bit, and then we can get Matt's opinion. It depends. It could devalue the book if it's popular enough. Maybe not. There's actually a lot of convention exclusives that end up getting shared to multiple different cons, or they'll do a slight tweak or change to it, and then it'll show up at the next con. Fan Expo is pretty popular for doing that. People still kind of tend to fall for it. If you're only looking for the quick flip, it really depends on the cover. Long-term investment wise, I'd say it's probably not going to be the best thing for the value of that book. But then again, the point, and Kyle's not here, I don't want to speak for him, but maybe just getting it in the hands of more people or trying to share the cover more was his objective. It's kind of hard to say, but yeah, it could devalue the book. Matt, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think certainly if your aim is to just get your work seen and you don't care about it becoming ever more valuable than the cover price, and really no publisher cares about that. Marvel doesn't care if Venom number 28 is ever worth more than the $3.95 cover price. They sold it. They're never taking it back. They already got paid. But variants as a whole are a kind of collector's musical chairs. And we're seeing the music stopping a lot. We're seeing one of the biggest producers, Frankie's Comics, of variants filing for, bankruptcy. This is a huge thing. One conversation that I think we were even talking about this offline a while back is what will be the thing that can truly derail comics? Will it be that the comic companies get too greedy and comic shops stop buying them and close? Or does it just take a handful of really big comic sellers to go out of business and kill a huge portion of the revenue stream for the publishers to the point that they stop publishing? And there's a lot of different variables here, but it's all part of that same kind of musical chairs concept. And a lot of that is connected to overselling things for specific exclusives, for people that are buying, I think the other Kyle Elliott was talking about buying, one of these exclusives and then flipping it for like a ridiculous amount of money. Well, good, great. One of the people who paid $750 for that book is going to lose money eventually if they haven't already. But if your business is in that, it's a volatile commodity. There's safer ways of being a collector and a seller. But that might be what they like. They like the buzz of getting the new thing and flipping it. I mean, that's as addictive as horse racing, for some people.
Yeah.
So, there's that gambler aspect to this hobby, which I think is bad. The mystery box thing, which I've been preaching, that is the worst thing in the comics business right now. Although is illegal.
It's I will legality aside, the terrible aspect, I say that, and I'm a pretty anti mystery box guy for the most part, but there are some that do it a lot better than others. I will say that. And I don't want to paint, again, I can't say I want to play devil's advocate and not stop painting with a broad brush. There are some mystery boxes out there that, whether like they show, hey, here's everything that's possible.
Yeah.
Here is the floor, here is the ceiling, and you can figure out for yourself whether or not you agree with their math. That's a little bit more palatable. Or there's people that do mystery boxes where they tailor it to the person that bought it. They check out their stuff. They, maybe they do a custom sketch cover. There's a few guys out there that do that kind of stuff. Just want to point that out. But yeah, for the most part, geez, I think a lot of people have learned a lesson by now. But if you still think you're going to make a bunch of money buying mystery boxes and flipping stuff out of them, it's pretty rare.
But even that floor and ceiling thing, which I think is the most dangerous aspect of it, is in the back in the day, you'd buy a grab bag, right? Like the Star Wars comics came in those grab bags, and they were like 5 cents cheaper than if you bought the comics individually. And you didn't know what you were getting, but as a kid, you kind of didn't care. And in that era, it was less than it is now, a collector's market. It was just about having comics to read. A good grab bag, and every comic store had these mystery bags, and almost nobody would buy them. Some mom would come in and buy them as like party favors for their kid's birthday party, and that's how you get rid of them. But you wouldn't say, well, it's going to be worth somewhere between 100 and 250 bucks, but you got to pay 150. It would always be, we're guaranteeing you that for $1 you get $3 worth of stuff. You know, and that model changing into much more of a gambler's model of maybe you get something good and maybe you get screwed, I think it is literally gambling. I think it passes the definition of gambling in all 50 states. And of course, if you are running an illegal gambling operation, that's RICO statutes. We talked about this before in another show. But and it just hasn't been enforced. That doesn't mean it will never be enforced. Just like the fact that they weren't enforcing music rights wasn't an issue is all of a sudden an issue because we talk about it, you know, and people have to be aware that you set yourself up for disappointment. And that's why I really have a massive problem with most of what I see. And I see these more and whatnot than any place else. The possibility that you can lose, you know, like it's maybe you get 20 comics that you didn't want, but they're at least worth more than what their individual value would be if you had purchased them separately.
Right. Yeah. And when it comes, by the way, when it comes to the whole, like, it hasn't been a problem, we've been able to do it and get away with it. All it takes is the one right person. You know, think about who's really watching Whatnot. What are the odds that somebody in legal and a music industry type setting has seen a stream? Might be lower than you expect, even though there's that many people on the platform. You think everybody, I talk to people all the time and I mention Whatnot, and they're like, what is that? You know, people on the street don't know necessarily, or maybe they're a sneakerhead and they do. You really just have no way to know.
Yeah.
But it takes, you know, the right person who happens to have some stake in the issue watching to then be like, why aren't we on this yet? You know, why aren't we attacking this? And there you go. That could have been what happened as well. We don't know.
Yeah, music rights management companies are super aggressive.
Yes.
You know, so they cold call businesses all the time and get them signed up for a plan that allows them to play music. So I guarantee you it's already happening. I don't know if those companies contacted Whatnot specifically, and their explanation was like, not our problem, go after the users. And they'll be like, yeah, we got a stack of files here. We'll see how that works out for you. Disney, these people there are law firms filled with people just looking for violations of Disney product. In a single instance, Disney would be like, don't draw attention to that. When it's a lot, then they sometimes make examples of the smallest fish because they know they're not going to have a defense.
Yeah. While we're talking about what is allowable and not on Whatnot, Awesome Sauce Radio has an interesting question that actually, this is something that I have had really interesting experiences with. Basically, he's asking, you know, what is Whatnot's terms on selling adult comic books made for adults? And I will say this much: a video that you will see come out from my channel is something along the lines of there is kind of like a low key Cold War happening against you know, nudity in comic books or nudity on covers, those sorts of things, sexual comics, whatever you want to call it. There are a lot of people that I'm very close with that have had, for selling very tame stuff that is definitely PG-13, but is associated with adult books, have been banned from eBay, have had their accounts deactivated, or limited to the point where they actually are paying higher fees and all these different things, and they have item limits. You know, I've mentioned that I sell on the service Drip. Drip does not allow any of that stuff. Whatnot at this point does, unless that's something that's changed. I haven't really been on Whatnot very much recently. I'm not sure if that's one of the changes that came out of this, but I know I was on a stream with Jack DeMaio where he was talking about how, you know, people were talking. The conversation started out, and this is actually kind of a shifting goalpost thing, in my opinion. The people were talking about streamers wearing sexualized clothing, right? Or cleavage or whatever you want to call it. You know, we all know what I'm talking about when I say that. And it is kind of
the honey trap.
Yes, exactly. I call it, like, you know, Twitch thirst trap or whatever.
Yeah.
Insta thoughts, whatever you want to call them. I tried going on there and showing my beard. For some reason, it didn't have the same effect. It's really weird. I don't understand it. This world's crazy. But he shifted the conversation to talking about how Whatnot was a platform out there that allows people to sell, nudity on comic books, which I think it's weird that he's shifted the conversation there in that particular perspective. But I do want to talk about that for a second, because I am actually pretty happy that Whatnot does still allow that. I think there is, you could say that that's crass or you don't like it or any of these different things. But, Matt, I'm sure like there is a long history of erotica in comic books, going back
Tijuana
many
Bibles.
decades.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think it is something that is a very interesting topic. As far as I'm aware now, they do allow it Awesome Sauce. I actually kind of hope they continue allowing that.
There's sellers that only deal in brand new adult variant comics of stuff I've never heard of. When I was exploring the service, I was so surprised to see it, because I hadn't seen it in so long, because you never see it on eBay. You don't see it on Amazon. There's so many outlets that you can't get it, that Whatnot has become they almost have a exclusive to this type of content, except the companies themselves that sell directly on their own websites. But you can get deplatformed by PayPal if PayPal deems what you sell to be pornographic.
Yeah.
And then there's state by state and even county by county regulations about what's okay where you're located. Even if you don't have a storefront where you've got a front window that's got adult material, the fact that I don't know if there's a minimum age to sign up for Whatnot or not, if it's below 18 or if it's what it is.
Good question. I think there might be.
When you look
I think that's how they get around it, is it's 18 plus.
Then that being the case, since you can't access anything without actually having the app, then you're hoping that I guess a 13-year-old kid with a credit card could probably sign up, maybe.
Yeah.
But if they get caught selling it in Florida, we know what happened to Mike Diana for making drawings that the state didn't like. He was prosecuted in one of the only prosecutions against pornography in the United States at that time, and the only person ever sentenced to not be able to draw.
Yeah. Shout out to Swaglehouse, who hopped in here to say he wanted to do a video on raffles.
Swag's great.
Yeah, awesome guy, awesome member of the community. Always happy to see him pop in, and that's true for all of you wonderful people who've popped in and are watching us at an insanely late hour here on a Wednesday/Thursday morning.
Raffles not connected to actual charities are illegal. And it's not even just connected. I think it's like it has to be 85 or 80% of the proceeds must be connected to a verified charity in order for a raffle to actually be legal. So many people hold raffles. I see them all the time, and they are mostly illegal. These people are breaking the law. And if they get caught, it's serious. It's a federal crime.
Another interesting thing about that too is, and I haven't really been able to determine the legality on this. I've heard people say even like doing a YouTube auction is technically illegal.
Possibly. I mean, again, it may vary state by state, and
I think that
how
might be
you
it.
handle it. Yeah, like you may need a special license. Yeah. Maybe county by county, not state by state.
Yeah, it could be. It is definitely one of those topics that, it's funny. I mean, I think we kind of do things. We kind of go through the motions. We see other people doing it, and in a lot of cases, we assume it's right, or it's okay, or it's legal. I know that kind of
argue with a traffic cop about that, though, right?
right, exactly. Well, and then is that traffic cop correct versus what a lawyer would say? Which is often the case. Is something that came up earlier. Even as a lot of people who are police officers don't have a full understanding of the law necessarily, because
certainly
a lot of lawyers
bunch of channels dedicated to that I spend too much time watching, like
Audit
the Auditor and
yeah, that's exactly.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, it's interesting how it works out. I think one area this relates to is a lot of people misunderstanding how you're supposed to report your income from selling comic books. That's something the hobby comes up against. And there, kind of infamously, there was the reporting that was going to come out for anybody that sold over $600 on platforms like eBay or through PayPal. I guess I'm going to say luckily, because I think it caught a lot of people off guard. that was pushed back. That legislation or the tax code was pushed back for the enforcement of how they were going to issue those forms. However, I'm just, throwing this out there, not legal advice, not tax advice, but, get your house in order and make sure that you're doing what you need to do on that front, because the last thing you want to be doing is fighting with Uncle Sam about selling comic books.
Yeah, I generally over-report my income just in case.
Smart for sure. One records every show. I'm sure they'll pass all the info along if they get the yeah. That's a good point to bring up too.
If they get subpoenaed,
right? Yeah. Star say, hey, by the way, I didn't say hi to you earlier. Thanks for being in here. I know you're up late watching from Vegas, by the way.
Oh, hey, neighbor.
Yeah. There's always a bunch of people in those streams. Yeah, I have such a weird feeling about the, it's like we talked about earlier. We talked about the attractiveness of a person, and then we talked about the broad versions of that attraction, but also just the very stereotypical version of that, which is if you're just a good-looking person, you're going to have a better time selling stuff. It's just human psychology.
You're gonna have an easier life. Never
Right.
mind. You're probably better at selling stuff. The stats are in. That generally people who are seen as good looking have an easier trip through life.
Yeah. Even could be just a tall man can have a better time becoming a promoted leader in a corporation or whatever it might be.
Damn it.
But I think there is some definitely, I've seen some thumbnails, to your point, Starset, or some stream previews or whatever, where I, excuse me, guys, where I've had to kind of like roll my eyes a little bit, and I'm somebody who's generally, finds viewing that kind of content. It doesn't really bother me on a personal level, but even I've had to kind of roll my eyes and be like, okay. And then the other aspect of that is if you are a seller on that platform, you're like, cool, now I have to compete with that. How is that fair? And I do hope that they do have more guidance on what is acceptable there. I think every streaming platform that I can think of has had to kind of, deal with that eventually and figure out their policies, whether it's, different ads being displayed like on Twitch or something for their hot tub streams or whatever it might be. It's
Upsells.
It's definitely an issue. And I would hope that a selling app where you're primarily trying to sell stuff, that they would try to level the playing field. But that's another thing that hasn't really happened a whole lot on Whatnot. There is not much of a leveling of the playing field.
Don't their new terms also include that you can't lead off platform?
So is it
so?
As far as you're saying, like hey, hit me up on Instagram, that kind of thing?
Yeah, you can't solicit sales off platform.
Yeah, that's all.
Just like with eBay.
Now, I actually am willing to admit that I'm ignorant of what their TOS said before, but when I did my training on Whatnot a long time ago now, it seems like, with Jack DeMaio, that was one of the things that was mentioned in the orientation. Do not sell off stream, off platform. Conversely, I'll tell you, this is kind of a funny thing, and I don't think this is actually accurate, but I'll say this. I am also a seller on Drip. I went through the Drip orientation. In that case, it was a one-on-one orientation. For Whatnot, it was about 8 to 10 of us listening to Jack DeMaio talk. In the Drip orientation, they actually were okay with that, which blew me away. Actually, I was told specifically if there's a shipping issue, because with Drip, there's actually kind of a hybrid of who covers and pays for the shipping. The buyer is responsible for a portion of it after the seller gets a free amount of shipping for each buyer in their stream. It's kind of complicated. Mm-hmm. One of the things they said is like, oh, if you sold an item and you needed a lot more shipping from somebody because it's heavy or whatever, have them contact you and send you the difference. Like, and I said, like, contact me like through the messaging on the platform, or what do you mean? He's like, no, like through PayPal or whatever. Like, what? Okay. So, that there's definitely some interesting takes on how to handle that kind of stuff. But I'm going to be surprised if that's still their stance on that issue at this point. That blew me away.
A Figure Drawing says, mind you, not reporting $20 you made at a yard sale is still illegal. Not actually, because that would qualify as being below the poverty line. As you discussed, it's a $600 limit is what has to be reported.
But if you were to sell, 15 yard sales a year and it added up, you would
And
eventually
yeah,
get
and
to
it
that point.
passes that threshold of 600, then you would have to report it. Yes.
Well, but the other thing too that is interesting, and again, not tax advice, not a lawyer, stuff that I'm doing more investigation on right now, but I believe on a hobby level, and I'm sure I'll instantly get corrected on this, if you were to, let's say you were to buy $100 collectible and your intention was to sell that and you waited too long, you lost money on it, you would then only need to report the difference, which would be $20, the $80 that you eventually made from that the sale, but you would actually be negative at that point because you originally invested $100.
Keep your receipts.
Yeah, so you kind of almost keep a running ledger essentially of what you've done throughout the year, and it's a good idea.
I actually do. I write down when I purchase something, it immediately goes in a spreadsheet, so I know what I paid for it. So that down the line, if I decide that I don't want to hang in there on it, I can let it go for a certain amount. And if I'm willing to take a loss on this because I can work out a deal with 4 other things that I know I'm still in,
Yeah.
black.
Awesome Sauce is again, please remember that Awesome Sauce is visually impaired. He's somebody who often appears on Drunken Chat. He's a great guy.
Cool.
As an adult content maker, you just made my day. I'm going to open the floodgates now. Testify. Well, hey, more power to you. Yeah, I think it's definitely one of the best things that Whatnot has going for it in the terms of comic books. It's a clear advantage. There's nowhere else you can go and sell adult comic books like you can on Whatnot. It's just, if there is, I haven't heard of them.
There's only a handful of outlets that even cover, adult or erotic art. So, Hustler hires me once or twice a year to interview artists, and it's always, someone who works in erotica, but that's such a huge catchphrase, or catch-all, I should say, that it can mean so many different things. I've interviewed Elias Chatsoudas, who's done covers for Nick at Dynamite, and great interview actually. And then I've interviewed people whose work is super personal, fine art, representational in a very specific way. And then you have publications like the publishers at Blue Blood publish a magazine called Barely Evil. And Barely Evil is like a gothic erotic magazine, and they always do an artist profile every issue. And it's usually an illustrative comic art type artist. But those are few and far between because actual physical publications are few and far between comparative to, like the 80s, the 90s, and things like that.
Yeah. Variants people hate today. So I gotta go back to your earlier comment here. Let's see. You say I'm buying X-Men Gold now. After all this drama, it's nothing compared to what's happening in comics now, and it's not bad at all. Back issues collecting will become big business.
Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, the current market, you definitely shouldn't be chasing the variant type thing. But like you alluded to, I mean, it's possible that some of these variants that went under the radar, because people are, it's kind of everybody's looking where they think the puck's going to be, the old Wayne Gretzky quote, right? And that's happening a lot right now. People have kind of wised up. I mean, I've made videos about it, that kind of stuff. It's like, why invest in this if everybody else is? But you take there's an Archie book that's dropping where they're introducing a new character, Cassie Cloud, I think is her name. It's going to drop, like, I think on Valentine's Day or something. Well, that book, it's a very niche thing. There's not a whole lot of first appearances in Archie books these days. You have a lot of kind of homage covers. Full disclosure, I bought a couple of them. So as I'm talking about this, I don't want anybody to think I'm trying to push that or whatever. Or if you want to have that opinion, I at least want you to know that I did buy some. And that's kind of an interesting thing, right? Like there's kind of these little oddball books that people are like, it's an exclusive, I'm going to avoid it. You're never going to make money on that. Some of this stuff, I mean, that's the reason I bought it, right? Like I think like, hey, this could take off someday.
Archie Comics is this weird nexus of something that's remained. It was irrelevant forever, and then it got super relevant at a certain point, and it's remained relevant. It's producing content constantly. Riverdale didn't have, I think, the big boon for value of Archie comics that it might have because it was a little too early. But Sabrina certainly had a huge impact.
Yeah.
When you got people like Veronica Fish and Sonia Ohm, you know, doing these amazing covers, certainly there's an element to that. I mean, there's also, when it comes to cover artists, some cover artists will transition into fine art. So, you know, while there were millions of Velvet Underground records printed, the original issue of the Velvet Underground and Nico featuring Andy Warhol's Banana, it's actually a pink banana on the first printing of that album. It's a very, very rare record. It's worth a lot of money. But even early editions of the reprints are quite valuable because it's Andy Warhol.
Yeah.
James Jean is by and large considered a fine artist, and so he didn't do a whole lot of covers. He mainly did fables. There's maybe a couple other things. So even inconsequential issues in the middle of the fables run are very likely to someday appreciate because of James Jean's art's value is appreciated.
Yeah.
When we see, you know, that Mike Zeck page from Secret Wars, you know, go for $3 million, you know, crushing, you know, previous records, all his artwork started to go up.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't valuable because it was Mike Zeck. It was valuable because it was a Black Costume origin page. But these things happen. Similarly with, you know, Mark Bagley, you know, his artwork started to go up after the sale of that Ultimate Fallout, I think, cover. And so, like, there's a cascade that happens. And so variants can be, for the reasons you said, something that can be valuable. But there's a lot of people, and I think specifically, I don't know if digital artists are getting a pretty fair price already, or if there's going to be a huge change either up or down. But there are going to be a handful of people who aren't so common that their work will remain somewhat scarce, the way we look at Dave Stevens covers.
Yeah.
You know, the way that we might start looking at Arthur Adams covers at a certain point, meaning that all those classic X-Men covers that he did will become valuable. How many of those are even graded? Did people send in classic X-Men number 3 and 4 and 5? You know, like finding those in 9/8 is tough because people read them.
Yeah. Well, and that's a
there's
great
lot
point. That's
like
actually
that.
something I've already been doing, is looking at those kinds of books, because and also the later Adam Hughes classic X-Men
Yep.
covers. People don't think about some of those covers when they're thinking about these artists. Like it's in some ways it's what we saw in the comic industry, in the comic collecting industry, I should say, when you had the COVID spike. You know, some people could say, oh, that's like a collecting bubble that happened. And I don't think they're necessarily wrong. But a lot of other people also said that this is kind of a natural regression, that we should have been seeing a positive regression for some of these books that have been undervalued for a long time. When you talk about somebody like Mike Zeck's artwork, probably an underappreciated artist. You know, people, it's a name that a lot of people are familiar with and everything, but he did, like, you know, some of these great G.I. Joe covers and all these other books, and people don't really look at that until something like that happens. And then you start to see, like, oh, there's an appreciation for it. And that's kind of how comics and art tend to work. You know, people understand that this is something cool. I should look at the back catalog. Talk about the Wayne Gretzky quote. If you can be one of the first people to go back and do that and start collecting some of that stuff now, you're, you know, if your intent is to invest in it, you're going to be pretty well off.
Someone mentioned Jenny Frison in the comments. I have a Jenny Frison cover for sale right now on the Pop Sequentialism website. You know, her Alice in Wonderland back cover. You know, and I think it's very reasonably priced. But she's definitely someone to watch. She's won an Eisner already for best cover artist. I mean, these are the building blocks of massive positive investment potential.
Yeah.
You know, Peach Momoko is, I think, getting very, very common. Her work is fantastic, but some pieces are just a lot stronger than others. You know, there's a lot of work out there now, but certainly she was very, very collectible for a while, and now with so many different variants available, maybe the excitement has dropped a little bit. Kale New, you know, covers are incredible, not that common.
Yeah.
will the industry be able to afford that work? You know, will they go to gaming? You know, will they go to some other you know, outlet that's very well known to pay better, which would make those comics very, very valuable. Some of them already very, very valuable.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's an option for the right variant, but when there's 40 variants of a specific issue, you know, it's really, the answer is none of them are really particularly rare. And unless it's actually a key issue, and unless you really, really love, you know, the artist on that particular cover, then it's not that, there's not a lot of FOMO there. You know, one of my favorite covers of the last, we'll say, 20 years is a Wonder Woman variant. It's not a key issue. It's in the middle of the run. I don't even know why they did it. But it's a Frank Quitely cover. And it's this amazing drawing of Wonder Woman with a shield and a sword. And he drew her very Pictish, which is probably, if you're going to read your old, you know, Roman lore, the Amazons probably were Pictish, and yet never been depicted that way. And now, because of the Amazon rainforest, we've got a Brazilian Wonder Woman, which sort of reflects a different aspect of a really cool cultural combination.
Yeah.
And you know, they kind of they didn't do that character very much justice, but I hope they do. Very
Right.
interesting character. I think a very investment worthy character down the line. The prices are so low right now, it's almost why not.
Yeah.
And there's variants on that. I mean, I would go with the cover A, but you know,
When in doubt, always go with cover A is my best, unless there's a character appears on one cover versus the other kind of a situation.
I love, by the way, those are like, those are kind of like,
Yeah.
those are my crack, you know, like where I'm like, oh, I have to have that one, but I still exhibit a lot of patience. I never picked up that Bucky. It got too expensive too quickly. I was kicking myself over that, but I do have the, oh my gosh, the Eternity as a child cover,
Mhm.
which I think is, you know, that was one where I put my money where my mouth was. I'm like, I think that's probably going to go up, and it wasn't very expensive, and I ended up picking up before that atrocious Thor movie. So we'll see what happens.
Awesome Sauce. I'm sorry, I'm not fully understanding your comment. There might be a like a speech to text kind of a thing in there or something like that. What not
Probably Whatnot. Yeah.
are you allowed to write your YouTube channel? Would love to know that. So I know you're probably still watching or still listening, and if you want to go ahead and clarify that a little bit for me, I'd love to answer your question. I just unfortunately don't know what you were getting at there, so I want to make sure I get a chance to re-ask that.
I think the answer is, well, technically you're not supposed to be able to advertise
Now.
your YouTube channel and whatnot, or you're in violation of the terms, and they'll fine you $24.
The one thing I'll say is, and it may be something I said, I know, like, for example, I do the drip stuff occasionally. Again, I haven't really been doing that very much either, but when I do that, you can simulcast your stream to YouTube, Instagram Live, Facebook Live, all at the same time. They actually have it built in, which is pretty cool. That's actually one of the things that drew me to drip. I was like, oh, well, I can just have it go to my YouTube stream at the same time, and that's where most of my people are going to know me from. So why not? And then I can just have drip handle like all the transaction processing and generating shipping labels and all that stuff. Because that is the biggest nightmare for selling stuff on these types of platforms to begin with, is, you know, tracking down people for payment after the show or whatever. Luckily, most of you people, by the way, have been pretty awesome about that, but occasionally it can be kind of a nightmare, because then you're like, okay, well, it's been 2 weeks and I haven't heard from you, and now you want your books because you got paid or whatever, and you kind of turn into that Instagram claim sale kind of guy that way. Because I know that's a very common problem they face. You think they were asking about tax laws? Interesting. I didn't catch that from that, but yeah, we'll see if we get a clarification on that question. I will just tell you, as it's getting late even here on the West Coast, I'm probably going to wrap up somewhat soon. So I'm kind of, you know, giving that chance to ask those last kind of couple of questions, be respectful of our guest time as well, as we are getting late here on the West Coast. They don't want you just not to farm new buyers. Yes, 100% agree with that, Kyle. That is for sure. Plus, I mean, just as a look at it from a company perspective, if there's some sort of disagreement between a buyer and a seller, and an aspect of it takes place through IG messages or whatever, Twitter DMs, doesn't matter. Then there's a possibility that they might not have all the information. They have their own messaging in the app. I guarantee you a large part of why they introduced that feature is because they want to be able to review those records if there is some sort of disagreement between a buyer and a seller, or another violation of their terms of service. So I'm sure they want that all to take place there. So that's just my assumption in the matter.
Delotto is prolific.
He's pretty prolific, yeah, and yeah, pretty prolific. I mean, unfortunately, that's the weird double-edged sword with a lot of these fantastic artists that you see on a lot of exclusives. It's kind of the debate I've had for a long time with myself is it good that we're getting all these exclusives, giving artists a chance to make more art and to get paid and to continue wanting to do this? Or is it bad that we're saturating the market with so many covers? And I think, the real trick is, like anything, it depends. There's a certain breaking point. Those sorts of things come into play. I will say that in my personal opinion, when it comes to the exclusives and the number of variants we've had, I think we are definitely starting to see a breaking point for people. So that's just my opinion on the matter, but I don't think it's a very controversial opinion either.
Environmentally, are these sound?
Yeah.
We're cutting down a lot of trees to make this paper that's going to sit in another box made of paper in somebody's garage for too long until it floods and is completely worthless.
Well, and a lot of talk about paper and ink shortages, and yet we're seeing, I mean, I haven't crunched the numbers, but I'm pretty confident saying that during some of the times those conversations were happening, there were probably more titles being printed than there had been in decades.
Yeah.
So, especially when you think about different print runs for different exclusives, and maybe not more titles in the sense that, we're not printing so many copies of ASM or whatever, but if you're printing sometimes literally 50 versions of the cover, that's 50 different print runs. And how many of those didn't sell, because no one was interested in that cover? There's tons of these things that just sit too. And how many shops, Frankie's, that had issues now because they're overextending into too many variants and too many exclusives because, talk about gambling. Some of those hit early on. They were good for their business. They decided to keep doing them. They overextended possibly. It's definitely a problem.
I mean, a tough pick would be something like Miracle Molly, because there's a lot of really good versions of that cover. Like, which is ultimately going to be the one that's the most valuable is the jury's out. Like, we're not going to know until those comics have been circulated for a couple of years and people start leaning towards one or the other. There's a couple just like legitimately really, really great covers. Punchline, too many, like there's just too many damn covers. And the other problem with that character is too many appearances. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but you do run
the Hell Arisen's legit rare.
Yeah. Hellrisen 3, but then there's people that make the argument for 89, Batman 89. But just going right along with that, talk about Miracle Molly, like that is an interesting case where total, we, on Tynion's run, we saw, Punchline, Ghostmaker, now we got to get on this Miracle Molly train. You can kind of throw Vengeance, Bane's daughter in there a little bit, a few other characters. And Miracle Molly where? Like, I mean, it's the same thing I talk about with Null, though, where people are all, that Schadenfreude is kicked in. Oh, yeah, people that spend a lot of money on Venom 3 are, sitting with a brick now and all this stuff. But people don't like Donny Cates's the way he ended the King in Black storyline and the story with Venom. Well, what about in 10 years when some visionary comes along and Null is the new Thanos or whatever?
Yeah.
Or he shows up in the MCU. Or, I don't think MCU spec is necessarily the best barometer now for success.
It's not what it was. It's not what it was.
But it doesn't mean it's never going to happen again. I mean, especially since we are in a down market, it's hard to say in a couple of years what could happen. And I think a lot of that is also related to a lot of people not liking Phase 4 of the MCU, and if Phase 5 is better, that could change things too. Of course, a lot of variables in play, but
By the time they get to Young Avengers, a lot of that stuff that people sold off because the prices didn't appear the way they thought will happen. I mean, like your Kate Bishop first appearances are going to be, something to hang on to. Basically, that entire New Avengers run.
Yeah, well, Cassie Lang.
Yeah, stature and
yeah.
That's going to happen. I mean, it won't happen immediately, maybe, but they're clearly building towards a team. There's too much money behind it to not happen. But I mean, all things equal, it's sort of like, is it the best investment now? You kind of want to put your best money into the thing that's going to cause the biggest move. And I mean, we know there's 5 Kang movies coming.
Yeah.
So, Avengers 8 is looking pretty good right now.
True. Yeah. I think, a lot of people that did invest in that book are probably happy that trailer came out, because I think to a certain extent, it seemed like, when are we ever going to see this guy again?
Yeah.
And now we're going to finally, and it's probably a different version of Kang at that point too. If you haven't seen X-Men 85 by Gabriel Dell'Otto, French variant from 2004, my God, man, it's probably his best work. I'm not familiar with that one. I'll definitely have to go check that one out. If you watched any of the Kevin, yeah, very much so. If you watched any of the Jason Mewes and Kevin Smith Whatnot stream, Jay figured out pretty quick how to get the crowd hyped up and spending money. They were having fun and thanking winners for $50. That's cool. That's good to hear. I did not see that stream.
I haven't seen those either, but
that's one of those things that we talk about not being able to rewatch streams, stuff like that. Like, and I know like Jim Lee was on a stream and a few other things. It'd be cool to see some of those streams. The Post Malone, yeah. That's actually, I'm surprised they don't have some of that stuff on their YouTube channel. That I'll go look, and maybe they do. I don't know. Hey, have a good night, Nick. Thanks for popping in here. I do appreciate you watching. I'm going to be doing a video pretty soon that Nick was able to inspire. That's going to be talking about a pretty cool cause. So keep your eyes peeled for that.
Nick, if for people who don't know, does some incredible art sale streams on his own channel.
Yeah.
Really, really phenomenal artwork. Dynamite is definitely a company that does a lot of variants, but I think that it's straight into the quality of the artwork, that he's hiring incredible artists to do some of their best work month after month after month. And then sometimes he has those pages to sell, and he also buys other stuff. He's a massive collector of just kind of all things comic art. And so he's purchased some amazing stuff from me, from a lot of other people I know. And sometimes it's like catches a squirrel, it's like, oh, well, I'll offer this one back out. So you can always get some really, really amazing stuff. He always has pretty good deals.
Yeah, and he's just such a big booster for the community too. I really appreciate that. It's just, we need more people like that. So that's great.
Best cheerleader since Stan Lee.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I guess we got a clarification here. Basically, are you allowed to promote your YouTube channel and tell people to go? So that's the thing is, before, at least I could do that, and it wasn't a problem. I don't think anybody had a problem with me doing that in the before times, because I would say things like, "Hey, I just came from my live stream, and now I'm doing this." Never once got a comment about that or anything. Now that said, it doesn't necessarily, like we talked about, it doesn't necessarily mean it was okay. I never saw any kind of rule against saying that, because I wasn't saying like I just got done doing my auction on YouTube, which wasn't the case in that case anyway. And now I'm here. I was talking about just doing a live show. Now, as I understand it, that would not be okay. That would not be kosher with what they want you to have happen on the platform. And
I wonder if you have a sign in back of you that has, the HTML, the web address or your @ for your other accounts, if that's a big deal. It's the type of thing that they can enforce on a whim. So it's sort of like do so at your peril or at your own risk.
Well, and that's just it. I know that like a lot of streamers, and there's other software too. It doesn't just have to be OBS, but I use OBS to stream. And part of what I was getting into when I was kind of moving out of my Whatnot phase was making like overlays and things like that would showcase that kind of stuff. And I think that honestly, when you watch those kind of streams, my personal opinion, they tend to look a little better, a little more high production value. they're a differentiator from what happens on the platform. But it's going back to kind of something you just said, Matt, is that also, like I have this suspicion that there's just not much moderation taking place on Whatnot.
Yeah.
And I can't definitively say that, but as somebody who has been on the platform quite a bit,
Someone who's watched a stream.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and I'm also on the Whatnot Sellers Discord, and I see people constantly saying, hey, this was happening in stream, this was happening in stream, this was happening in stream. And there's always this canned response, well, report it to Trust and Safety at Whatnot. And it just gives you this very clear impression that there's nobody out there really kind of, and maybe there is, it's just there's so many streams happening that, the one person they have doing it, or the 5 people they have doing it, or the 15 people they have doing it isn't enough or something. But, and again, they can probably go back and review all that stuff, but they have to be made aware of it in the first place. I saw a comment from somebody in chat earlier that was talking about this, is that, there's a lot of people that complain vocally about a problem they've had, but that they actually report it. And I think we're seeing a lot of that happen, because I can tell you, I know a lot of people in this community that they'll have an issue with somebody and they'll gripe about it, but they won't actually talk to the party that can help or that was responsible for, excuse me, for that mistake.
And there's more valuable in it for them for the complaint than there is in the solution.
Or they're just
psychologically.
There's almost like this, maybe like a hassle aversion kind of a thing. Well, then I got to email them, and it's work to email them. I got to wait for a reply. And to a certain extent, I kind of understand that, because usually it doesn't matter how well you explain your situation in the first email, you get this reply back. Okay, what's your account number? It's like, well, it was in my email. Like, as I said before, you got to type it all back out. It does become kind of a hassle, but there's also, people that they kind of almost enjoy that vocal aspect of complaining. There's a lot of weird stuff going on with that. And I agree. There's something to that for sure. Kyle, customer support on Whatnot is a joke. Yeah, I know it's better for sellers than it is for customers from my anecdotal evidence that I can point to.
Sellers can ban you just because.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I think we've had a wonderful conversation. I don't want to drag it out too late tonight. I know people are still in chat, and you guys are awesome night owls. I still have some work to do. I know Matt's a busy guy. But Matt, I do want to give you an opportunity as we start to wrap things up here. Anything you want to talk about, anything you want to plug, anything that we didn't get a chance to talk about tonight you wanted to mention?
I guess, there's, like I said, there's this, you can always pick this up on popsequentialism.com. This is the original 80-page giant that was sort of the show catalog for the very first Pop Sequentialism exhibition. Covers a lot of the biggest artists of today. My springboard point for that was to do an exhibition that talked about the importance of the teams of writers and artists working together to create great work. My artwork collection in the background here, you can see a lot of Bruno Redondo work on the wall there. But Zoe LeCay over here, Christopher Ulrich, Mark Todd, Lindsay Way, Dave Lebo, Rodolfo Loaiza, Joe Coleman, Bernie Wrightson, all kinds of stuff. But
Nice.
By all means, pop over to the popsequentialism.com website, take a look at some of the art and toys that I deal. I took most of the comic books off the site because I still occasionally write for Go Collect, and I didn't want anybody to think that there was a conflict of interest. I think it sort of takes a little bit of the skin in the game out, which makes it more fun for me. If I can't kind of talk about what I'm necessarily purchasing, but I do a lot of industry analysis and write about that. And then also the Gallery 30 South website, gallery, 3, 0, south.com, which is my fine art gallery. The current show we have is a bunch of portraits by the artist Kate Kelton of the victims of the Me Too unit, we'll say the survivors of people like Harvey Weinstein and Bill Cosby, and it's portraits that are done in an architectural reference kind of way, affordable, great work, museum worthy type of stuff. But there's also an archive of previous shows and available artwork there too. So yeah, I can check those out, and you can go through my archive at go collect. I'm probably going to put in some links this week for the past articles just to have stuff you can go through in the news. But I update pretty frequently, and we do a new show at Gallery 30 South once a month. Oh, and I'll be on Comic Art Fans on February 13th, so the day before Valentine's Day, doing a live artwork sale.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, once again, I appreciate Matt coming on. It's something that's been kind of long in the works. We've had a few different shows we've talked about doing, some stuff that just kind of fell through before, and then just, man, if you guys have been following my channel, I've had a pretty crazy last like 6 weeks or so, and I know Matt's been busy. So, new year, we're going to be getting back into things. I hope to have you on again, Matt. You're a wonderful guest.
Love to. Sure.
Tons of great topics we can talk about. And I think the community would definitely appreciate that. So that's fantastic. I also want to thank Kyle Willis, our guest earlier. Really, took a lot to come on and talk about that stuff and be transparent to, tell his side of the story. And that's the objective I had for the stream tonight, is that he got a chance and a platform to do that, kind of give, kind of equal time, whatever you want to call it. And I'm really happy that everybody here was, for the most part, extremely respectful too, which I really appreciate. It was one of my concerns about tonight. So if you're still watching, thanks a lot for being awesome in the chat. If we didn't get to your questions, or if you have anything you want to follow up with me, I'm always available through my DMs. You can always reach me on my Instagram, wherever. Go follow our guests. And thanks again, everybody, for having such a wonderful time tonight with us. Have a fantastic evening, and we'll catch you on the next one.